the direction.
And we did discuss that
You know,
in our weekly call.
Because of how we're structured, we're not like a mountain community.
Right.
Where it's like, yeah, the church owns that lot over there and they can build an apartment complex on it.
Right.
You know, you could say, oh, well, you know, we'll just start throwing up an apartment over here by Sapp Brothers. You start, we have to look at ourselves because we're a little different
Right.
than a lot of these other communities. And I don't think giving a use by right to all those entities is primarily a great thing. And I don't care whose pet project it is. I just don't see it as being really a good thing for the.
Well, and one of the reasons that we're in an amend position also is because it was discussed in our weekly Friday call that developers could come in and start buying up this land,
Yeah.
pennies on the dollar.
Hey,
And not for what its true value is. And if it's a different developer and it doesn't fit into the community plan, they would be given the right to build something that is not necessarily conducive for that.
here's another scenario though. We had a guy who actually transferred his land into being a church. What was his name, Rocky? Foster Wolf. Foster Wolf. And he would have been able to have that right. And if you take some of this land out east, out here on the north end of our community, and they're struggling to get approvals. What says they can't become a church or a faith-based organization? That's pretty easy to do. And then they go, okay, now we have the use by right, we'll just build what we want. I see this as being
And I will bring that up
particularly
to,
in a position of manipulation for people to be able to develop what they want when it's not conducive to what our zoning is.
so
Well, thank you, Michelle. We
we do need to jump on, but yes.
I would say we have a standing call on Friday. We'll still get the memo out to you all, even though we don't have a Monday meeting. We can share some of these details back with our lobbyists and see what else we've learned from. And we'll continue to keep reviewing it internally with our staff so that we provide that feedback to you.
Sure. And also amend means that we can, you know what amend means, but we can put in there like what you're talking about.
I'm okay with opposed, so put me down, Sean.
I did, you're written down,
That's all I need.
as is Councilmember Douglas.
Just put me opposed.
Please
Councilmember Chacon.
forgive me, my hand was raised. I just wanted to say, I completely agree with Councilmember Ford about this one. It undermines our ability to zone our own city. So I oppose.
Thank you. All right.
1, 2, 3.
That wraps it
So
up.
is that,
I
just to be
mean.
clear, is that the citizen position?
1, 2, 3,
Oppose?
4.
1, 2,
Yeah.
3.
3 out of
Four.
6, 4 out of 6 of you.
Councilmember.
Amend until.
Okay.
more information.
Come on, man. Get off the box and let's go.
Because I think the point well taken, if we can share your.
Oh,
That's 5.
we're,
Yeah.
we're at.
We're at 5.
Gave me a chance and you blew it.
So we take it back to the lobbyists on Friday that we oppose it.
Yes. I'd like to get this.
Yeah, you put my name on that one. It was fine.
I got it, I
No,
wrote
I mean, when
everybody.
you send it over to the governor.
Yeah.
Right. The floor is yours to take it.
Thank you,
All right,
everybody.
We're live.
Right, live, okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Michelle, appreciate that. All right, this is a hybrid meeting. The city council member public can view this meeting live on channel 8, city's website and YouTube. Live Spanish translation services being provided for tonight's council meeting by telephone. Please dial 720-386-9023 and use code 104091.
Okay.
Everybody gonna play that?
When you're ready, Marcus.
No, we're supposed to play the Spanish.
Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
All right,
Thanks, Bishop.
thank you. So there's no taping of the Spanish version of this?
No, sir.
Okay, all right, the city clerk is hosting a Zoom meeting. Speakers will be available to unmute himself. So I'll call a study session in order. It's 6:05.
Yeah, I want to just actually clarify that, Mayor. We do have live Spanish translation services are being provided for tonight's council meeting by telephone. So they would have to dial 720-386-9023 and use that code.
Right, but I thought there was a pause. I thought they were going to.
Oh, no, man, no, sir.
Okay,
There's
okay.
not someone on there for this.
All right, thank you. Okay, first presentation, Highway 2 corridor study. Jen Han, Intern Director of Public Works.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council. Nice to see you this evening. So we're here tonight to talk about the Highway 2 corridor study that is being conducted as a complement to, but separate from our Highway 2 medium project that we discussed last week. So this corridor study was actually identified as a need in December of 2022, and then an appropriation was made in 2023. From there, staff, of course, went on to write and post the RFP for the project. So the goal of the corridor study is to explore additional traffic safety and multimodal access in that corridor. All work for this project will be done in existing city right-of-way so that our residents experience as few impacts as possible, and so no property acquisitions will be required. Here in just a minute, Matthew with FHU is going to discuss the work that his team has done to date on this study. And then after that presentation, we'll talk about next steps. But in a quick nutshell, our next steps will be to seek your consensus this evening to continue the study. We'll then work towards final design on recommendations, identify funding to actually implement the recommendations from the study, and then identify the appropriate time to build this project into our future capital investment program cycle. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Matthew.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Matthew Downey. I'm a transportation planner at Ellsberg, Holton Ilvig. We're a consulting firm headquartered down in Green Village that does transportation engineering planning work. We've worked with Commerce City many times in the past. And yeah, I'm going to kind of give you, we started this study about a year-ish ago, kind of in like February, March-ish of last year. And done a lot of work in the last year and going to give you an update, and I'm happy to answer questions. That's just the picture. So I'm sure at least some of you are familiar with this project. This is a corridor study that's seeking to identify opportunities to make Highway 2, the entire stretch, basically the entire stretch of it within Commerce City, a safer, more connected, more free-flowing, functional corridor. This has been a typical corridor study planning process that started with some analysis of the existing conditions along the corridor related to safety and mobility and access. Some stakeholder coordination with various city departments and some outside stakeholders that I'll talk about. Obviously, community engagement, talking with the public about their needs and wants and desires for the corridor. And then that has culminated in some development of ideas for how we can make Highway 2 better and some evaluation of those concepts. We've done some conceptual design of the draft recommendations, and then kind of the final step that Jen alluded to is once we have consensus on what we're recommending, we'll develop an implementation plan for how we actually get it designed and built and out there to make people's lives better. These are just a couple highlights from the existing conditions work. Was really the first technical thing we did in the study. One of the primary reasons that we're doing this study is that there is a pretty substantial safety concern on the highway. You can see there just in the last, I think our analysis period was 2018 to 2023, I believe. And just in those 5 years, there were 134 severe crashes. And what we mean by that, there was a crash that resulted in either a fatality and or injury that required somebody to go to the hospital. So there were many, many more total crashes than that, but we really try to focus on the severe crashes because we're trying to make our streets, we don't want anyone to hurt our streets. Traffic volumes along the corridor, as I'm sure you're all familiar, it's a 4-lane roadway. Traffic it's quite a bit higher kind of in the central part where it goes by the Arsenal, and then towards the north, it's the lowest in kind of the older part of the city, but ranges from 12,000 to 20,000 vehicles per day. An interesting kind of quirk of this corridor is that pretty consistently southbound volumes on Highway 2 are pretty consistently significantly higher than they are northbound, like 15 to 20%. I assume that's probably because, you know, when you think about Highway 2, on the north side, you're bisected by the railroad, so there's not really many connecting streets. On the south side and the newer development and the older development, you have sort of a network of local streets that you can use as a bypass, but it's just kind of an interesting thing that you don't see on a lot of arterial roadways. Also, most travel that Highway 2 is a pretty significant connecting street, but most of the travel we see on Highway 2 is local. There aren't a lot of trips like starting in Commerce City, going along Highway 2 and then going further north or further south into Denver. That travel seems to, mostly people use the interstate for that. So the trips here are very localized. Most people on Highway 2 are going to and starting from somewhere in Commerce City. And that map you see there is just a map of the crash density. So kind of the greens and the yellows are where the crashes are more highly concentrated, which, as you'd expect, are at the major intersections. In terms of corridor connectivity, another kind of impetus for this study, and one thing we focused on a lot, is the multimodal element of Highway 2. Highway 2 is a very car-centric road. It works pretty well if you're in a car. It can be, especially on the south side, it can be a very challenging roadway to interface with if you're not in a car. One kind of like a benefit of Highway 2 compared to a lot of arterials in the Denver area is the trail you already have existing along the Arsenal and going all the way north. That's a really high quality, really safe, comfortable, multimodal bike type facility. It's really when you get south of Quebec where that trail ends that you just have an attached sidewalk and you have some striped bike lanes. It's a pretty tough place to be a walker or a biker. And also getting across the highway, you know, you're there because of the nature of both surrounding land use and the railroad. There really is only, 5 or 6 real intersections along the corridor. And so they're all very busy because that's where all the traffic is concentrated. And when you have a really busy intersection, it makes it that much harder and less safe and less comfortable for someone that's not in a car to get across that. So crossing Highway 2 and traveling along Highway 2 are both things we're looking at. I mentioned that stakeholder coordination has been a big part of this. So Jenna and Mike have been kind of the core Commerce City folks that we've been working on the study with, but beyond them, we've had a kind of a stakeholder coordination group that has met periodically throughout the course of the study, and that's included folks from economic development, some additional planning, public works staff, also staff from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. That's a major stakeholder because they have such a large property directly adjacent to the highway. And their role has really been helping us talk through what are the needs and the opportunities for the corridor from their department's perspective or from their constituents' perspective. They've helped us to kind of review, draft, and interim deliverables that we've developed and helped to refine corridor recommendations. The other thing that we've done regularly throughout the study is that obviously you have that other Highway 2 median design project that we've wanted to make sure that what we're recommending is consistent with what they're working on, what they're designing is consistent with what we're visioning for the corridor. So we've had numerous touch points with that team over the course of the study, and they've shared their conceptual drawings with us, and we've integrated those into the study as appropriate. And also the Commerce City Transportation Master Plan that kicked off while we were well into our study, but it's actually being done led by some colleagues of mine at FHU. And this will kind of build directly into the Commerce City Transportation Master Plan, as the recommendations that we have for the highway will get kind of replicated as recommendations in the overall Transportation Master Plan. So trying to make sure all these different studies are cohesive and looking at the same thing. Public engagement, also a very important part of any planning study, corridor study. We really focused on 2 primary phases during the development of this plan. The first was kind of right when we kicked off the study of just trying to figure out, hear from everybody. What do you think of the highway today? What's not working? What is working? What would you like to see done different? We actually had a joint initial public meeting with the Highway 2 median design team to because they were kind of kicking off at a similar point to us, and we had that at the Eagle Point Recreation Center. It was about 15 to 20 folks attended that meeting, and we also had a virtual presence where, if you attended the meeting or if you didn't, you could also go online, and we had a commenting map where you could zoom into the entire corridor, add a comment for anything you wanted to tell us related to Highway 2. Our second phase of engagement, which was kind of over the summer and early fall of 2024, That was, so during the summer, we really got into developing draft recommendations for ideas for improving the corridor. And then we went back to the public in a summer to kind of like share what we were thinking with the public and help them to prioritize both like what types of improvements to the corridor are most important to you. So is it improving the sidewalks? Is it improving traffic at the intersections? Is it improving crossings of the highway? And also to help us prioritize which segment of the corridor. We broke Highway 2 into 3 kind of primary segments just for organization. So it was the south side, like from 64th to Quebec, so kind of the older development, Quebec to, I believe it's 96th, kind of like where you have the arsenal, so there's not really any directly adjacent development, and then north of 96 where you have the newer development. And we're asking folks, of those 3 segments of Highway 2, which is most in need of improvement. And by far the most mentioned segment was the south side, the older part of the city. And we did that. We had an in-person engagement event at the July Music in the Park event. And at that event, we talked to about 60 to 65 people stopped. We just had a table set up, obviously, because we found a lot of success overall. And like getting people to come to a public meeting can be kind of tough. It's a very self-selective group that are very impassioned about what they want to tell you, but it's not necessarily representative of the community. When we go to somewhere where people already are, we get a much bigger and much more representative sample size. So that was a really great event. And just a couple of kind of quick charts summarizing what we were hearing from the community. That one on the left was asking about, how are the people interacting with, how do you usually use Highway 2 today? And you can see the vast majority of people that we were talking to primarily and or only drive on Highway 2. But then we asked them how are you interested in using Highway 2 if a different mode were more accessible, safer. You can see there's a lot of interest in using walking, biking, or access to transit. I will mention quickly, transit has not been a huge focus of the study. There's not really transit service on Highway 2. There is a short section of one RTD route that gets on Highway 2 for really like a block and then gets back off. But obviously people can walk and bike along Highway 2 to get to different transit corridors. So transit is an important consideration as well. And then in phase 2, as I was referring to, this is where we're asking folks what types of improvements should be prior, because we're going to come up with an implementation plan. All of our recommendations aren't going to be able to be built in the next year. So we got to like kind of focus our efforts and then build an implementation plan. And you can see from this chart that there's a lot of interest in really all the different kind of the 4 quadrants of improvements we were focused on, but certainly a lot of interest in sidewalk improvements and intersection safety. And then on the chart on the right, as I was alluding to, that southern part of the corridor that's got the older development, it's got a lot more stuff right up against the highway. That's where there's the most interest in improvements to Highway 2. And so the other kind of the second key technical focus of the study was based on the existing conditions work that we did and based on what we were hearing from the community and stakeholders, really coming up with a draft list of ideas of, these are all the issues we know about. What are some things we can do to the highway to make it safer, more connected, more accessible, more functional? And, we broke it down into those 4 kind of key types of improvements. So improving sidewalks / the trail, intersection improvements, bicycle pedestrian crossing improvements. This is, like I was saying, like getting people across the highway, and then roadway and traffic improvements. This is not a bike ped corridor study. This is a holistic corridor study. So we weren't discounting the potential needs for traffic improvements. And, we built this long list of dozens of different ideas, and then we went through an evaluation process, really trying to identify, these are some of the things we know. We're trying to improve safety, equity is a focus. We're trying to improve mobility, traffic operations, trying to eliminate conflicts, trying to support what the public is telling us, trying to do something that is constructible, and then trying to either improve the environment or mitigate potential negative impacts to the environment. And the details of this particular graphic are not that critical, except it just kind of gives you a glimpse of how we were doing the evaluation. So the far left column is just, this is one screenshot of all the different projects we had identified as potential things we wanted to consider. The top row is those, I think it's 9 or 10 evaluation criteria. And then we did this as sort of a quasi quantitative, qualitative evaluation of essentially trying to relatively assess how positively or negatively do all of these projects correlate with the different criteria. So like, for instance, like a dark green versus a light green, you know, like a highly positive safety improvement would be something like we'll get to it, but we have a recommendation for a detached sidewalk in the south part of the corridor where it would get people far away from the street. It would be a wide space for biking and walking. It would be a really significant enhancement over the safety of that corridor today. Whereas, you know, like a mildly positive safety improvement would be something like adding some, you know, median refuges at a signalized intersection, or doing some striping that, you know, it's a spot improvement, but it's not a significant safety improvement, but it would be safer than it is today. Blue is kind of like, so some projects just don't really line up with certain criteria, so there's not really an assessment there, and or they're neutral. And then negative is, you know, a strong word, but it's really just like, is it difficult? So like constructability, for example, the dark orange you see there, it's just a difficult, it's not a negative project. It's just it's a very complex, expensive, challenging project to implement. Whereas something that's like a light orange is all these, like nothing is easy in infrastructure, but a light orange would be something like it's a single intersection you're trying to reconfigure a little bit. So it's challenging, but not super difficult. And same thing with traffic operations. You know, one of the draft recommendations we'll get to is potentially repurposing some of the laneage on the highway. That would have a significant traffic impact because you're repurposing space, whereas something that's reconfiguring an intersection would impact traffic, but not as significantly. So it's all kind of relative. If they're all being rated relative to each other for all of the criteria. And so, you know, we went through that process for all these dozens of different draft recommendations, and kind of in following up with our core city team and our project team, kind of identified some of the initial ideas we had come up with after we went through this evaluation. We didn't think they really were necessary or made sense or appropriate. So we actually kind of eliminated some from further consideration, but we still have dozens and dozens of draft recommendations for the highway. And these next few slides, I'm just going to highlight some of the bigger ones that, again, at the end of this, I'm happy to answer any questions. So this is kind of really our most substantial recommendation for the corridor is on that south section between 64th and Quebec, where I said today, there are some striped bike lanes, but when you have a roadway this busy and this fast, just a striped bike lane is not going to be safe or comfortable for most people. So, and you have just an attached sidewalk that's directly adjacent to cars, so it's kind of an uncomfortable place to be walking. So this is really, you know, we're trying to try and essentially extend that trail along the entire highway, where on the north side, you really have this really nice trail, on the south side, you don't. So how we're suggesting we do that is just in the northbound direction of Highway 2. We currently have 2 northbound lanes, repurposing that outside northbound lane. So basically just kind of extending the existing curb line into the street, taking away that outside northbound lane. So you still have one northbound lane, but then that second northbound lane essentially becomes a detached buffered multi-use path that would be 10 feet wide. So it's wide enough for bicyclists and pedestrians. Then you'd have a buffer space that can be used for landscaping, can be used for amenities, benches, you know, like there are a lot of different things you could do with that space. That does preserve the ability to keep dedicated northbound right turn lanes at the intersections where we need them, because there are some, you know, like 72nd is a busy intersection, and we want to be able to maintain a northbound right lane there. A lot of the intersections on that south side are just kind of private accesses that there's really minimal traffic today. And the other, so like I was mentioning earlier, the average daily traffic on this section of Highway 2 is roughly about 12,000, which is well within the realm of a 2-lane roadway to handle. You know, the guidance like nationally is that even 16,000, even up to 20,000 cars a day, if it's designed properly, can be handled with 2 lanes. And this is kind of a different configuration because we're not touching the southbound lanes. It's just the northbound capacity.
You have time for questions now, or you want to wait till?
Sure, yeah, however you prefer to run this.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, well, I have comments and questions, but first of all, there's 40 streetlights from 72nd Avenue to 64th. 20 of them are not working right now. And, the idea, I'm headed southbound and the walking, we got people walking there at night in that little path. And it really needs to be against the law. I mean, there's not enough room and it's dark and it just, and somebody just glanced down at their speedometer and they wander over a little bit, you got a dead pedestrian. So that's not a good idea. It needs to be, everything needs to be moved over to the northbound lanes or the east side of Highway 2, northeast side. And I like the idea of just having that northbound lane, one northbound lane and that right northbound lane being for right turn only. It just, I haven't seen a lot of accidents there, but I've seen a lot of close calls and people trying to slow down and turn into a business or a side street. And the cars get over it. It would make sense to me to make that one through lane. And even though it would be, in my opinion, congested at 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. But that's all I have.
Councilmember Ford?
Yeah, a couple things. You know, when hasn't been that long ago, the city, took over Highway 2 and we widened it. And spent a lot of money widening it, to be able to take out that northbound lane and create a sidewalk like that. Certain times of day, the traffic volume is way too high. And I think, to take it back down to one lane northbound will create a serious issue. I really am concerned about that. I would rather see it stay 4 lanes and not go down to 3. I know there are some sidewalks in front of, some of the trailer parks and things like that. Is there a way to make some connectivity without having to create this tree lawn and lose a lane of traffic? Because we needed to widen Highway 2, that's why we did it. And now to take it back down, after spending that amount of money, I think, we would take a beating over that. The other thing that I'm concerned about, I don't know how many conversations you've had with police and fire, because when you have an accident during rush hour on Highway 2, a lot of times emergency services has to go into the oncoming lanes to be able to get around the traffic to get to the accident. And so if there's, depending on how many breaks are in the medians, where they could get over and be able to go down the other side of the road. 134 accidents in 5 years that are injury accidents or fatalities. I think we have to make sure that emergency services can access the areas that they need to access for crashes. And I like all the ideas. It makes it more aesthetically pleasing, walkability, all of those things. But with the amount of crashes that Highway 2 has, I think we have to make sure that our emergency services can get to those accidents in a timely manner. Because last thing I want is to restrict their ability. If Highway 2 is tough anyway, with the railroad tracks that parallel it, for emergency services to get to where they need to go. But a lot of times I see them have to go into oncoming traffic to drive up to get past the congestion because of the accident to get to where they're going. So those are my main issues.
And just real quickly to add to that, Councilmember, we have actively engaged and we will continue to engage with our partners at the fire department and the police department. They have seen these conceptual designs and have had the opportunity to weigh in and provide support.
That's all that matters. I want to make sure that we're.
Absolutely, it's a
working
very
with
valid
everybody.
concern.
Thank you.
Councilmember Dukes?
Yeah, just, I agree with, Councilmember Ford. I think narrowing it is probably non-negotiable since we just widened it maybe 3 years ago. Is there a model or do you have models where you can still expand and widen the sidewalk? And what does it take to do that with?
Yeah, it's tough with the right of way because you have businesses right up basically to the existing sidewalk line today. And so this is kind of fits within the city right of way. So you know, if we're wanting to significantly expand the sidewalk and not impact the roadway, there's a potential for right-of-way acquisition, which is, you know, a challenging thing in itself. Like, I mean, there is an opportunity to widen the sidewalk, not have a buffer, and, you know, we could narrow the lanes without removing lanes. So there is kind of like, you know, a light version of this recommendation that would still provide a wider bicycle pedestrian facility that does not take away lanes. So we can look at that. The other thing that this recommendation does that it's, so it's not for the entire stretch, but there is a stretch of this segment today that has existing striped bike lanes, which are, you know, about 5 feet wide. So this recommendation is also removing those. And just because for the large majority of people, that bike lane is not something they would ever use. It's, you know, you're next to 40+ mile per hour traffic. So there, you know, we could still look at not taking away the car lane, but taking away that bike lane. So you're still getting 5-ish feet of space to put above the curb. So yeah, there are less impactful.
But as far as the reconstruction of Highway 2, were you guys not aware of that, or how did that get lost in this shuffle? When we?
I don't think it got lost. It just roadway needs change over time, and
I would say Highway 2's been in its effect since I've been at the city since 2019. So I mean, it's been widened for a period of time now, and I think what FHU has tried to do is to look at this in some, I'll call it not pretty radical, but some things to get us thinking about alternative solutions. It's not saying that this is the only solution, but this is the one that, if at the time when this project was funded, was to look at how to improve the pedestrian safety of those along Highway 2 and to remove vehicular and pedestrian conflicts at the same time.
And so will we see a model or pictures of the bike lanes being removed, or is this the only, sorry, I didn't get to go through the whole deck beforehand, but is this the only slide we're gonna be able to see the different options?
So we're not at final design or, you know, full design at this point. This is just a temperature gauge to see where you all are at, so we understand where to spend our funding to go down certain design paths.
Yeah.
So we're at an initial decision-making point to see whether or not, does this make sense? Does an alternative make sense or not?
Yeah.
Councilmember Kim?
And
Thank
we
you,
do still have some
Mayor.
more slides to go through as well.
Thank you, Mayor. So just, I mean, I agree with everyone else is saying with regards to Highway 2 and expand and, you know, removing one extra lane off of there. I myself am an avid cyclist too, especially during the summer, and it's always wonderful when you get whizzed by on heading northbound or even southbound in the bike lane by random pedestrian or random drivers who like to honk and try to scare you off your tri-bike. But hey, that's just me. One of the questions I do have is regarding so obviously a couple things. One is obviously efficient lighting is something that I think is would be needed unless that was already discussed. The other part of this too I'm thinking about is regarding the what do you call it? So is there plans to bury the electrical underground like they did off of Tower Road? Is that what they're going to do here too, or is there plans to?
We certainly could explore that option. That was not a part of this particular study, though.
Okay. That's all I got. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You know, I was gonna also suggest that, you know, I'd rather keep the lanes because we have a high amount of traffic that use that corridor in the morning and in the evening. And to shut that down, we're gonna have more problems.
Yeah.
And then to the right, there should be a curb and gutter on the side. There's no curb and gutter on that side over there. Because, and then actually slow the speed down to that corridor. Maybe that would help as well. Yeah.
We'll look at citywide speeds with our transportation master plan, and that'll wrap up here by the end of the year for you all to see and adopt. And that's the study that will help us say, you know, speeds in this corridor and the rest of the city, should they stay the same? Should they be raised or should they be lowered?
Okay. And then across down by Holly Street, I know there's a underpass, but that goes underneath the railroad though. That doesn't go underneath
the highway. So we don't have an underpass to go under Highway 2, just to go underneath the railroad tracks over to the Fairfax area.
Well, I think that goes under Highway 2, doesn't
No,
it?
there's a
Yeah.
pedestrian crossing
Right.
across Highway 2. The underpass is only
Yeah.
under the tracks.
It has a light rail press, yeah.
I thought that
It's
when
pretty
it-
scary crossing.
And I know on your other presentation, there's ways to go over, but I'm sure that's not part of this.
The
this
sound wall
segment.
study?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's separate.
all right, thank you. You go ahead and continue.
So another thing that we've been really focused on, kind of more corridor wide, is like I mentioned, there's really, 5 or 6 real major intersections along the entire corridor because of the railroad, so there's limited abilities to cross. And because of that, these intersections are all very large, they're quite busy. And particularly, again, if you're not in a car, it can be pretty tough to get across. Some of these don't even have sidewalks today. And so one thing we've been looking at is how can we, without impacting the operationality of these intersections, kind of make them a little smaller in footprint to make it a little bit easier to cross. And so the large, as you'll see on most streets, the large majority of crashes today occur at intersections because that's where you have the most conflicts. And that's cars and cars, and that's cars and bikes, cars and peds. And so one of the things that is on a lot of these intersections today are what we call slip lanes. So that's where the right turn lane is a really wide turn. You don't really have to stop at the intersection. And those are done generally for operational reasons. It's a little bit more efficient if you don't have to stop as a right turn lane and a turn. They can be pretty tough because it's essentially a free flow lane. So, if you're trying to, and this is where we have the trail crossing a lot of these, and that trail is pretty well used, and there's nothing making a car, while you're supposed to yield to pedestrians. Slip lanes have very poor yielding behavior, especially if there's nothing in them to kind of make you slow down. So one thing we've looked at is which slip lanes along this corridor, is there an opportunity to just convert that into a standard right turn lane? There would be some operational impact, but it wouldn't be reducing the capacity of the intersection. You would just need to actually slow down and potentially stop if you're trying to turn right. Because of the diagonal alignment of this roadway, some of those slip lanes are really necessary, especially for trucks to make those turns. If you got rid of some of those slip lanes and turned it into a traditional right turn, it'd be essentially impossible for a truck to make that turn. And that's particularly in kind of like the north, the left turns are really critical. The left turns you need to keep that slip lane capacity, but we do feel like there are some existing slip lanes along the corridor today that could be converted into standard right turn lanes, which just makes the intersection smaller. It reduces a potential conflict point between trail users and drivers, and would still allow people to turn right, as they are today, just a little bit slower. So we've identified some spots for that. We've identified some spots just where you have existing kind of like median noses that go up to the intersection. Some of those are pretty narrow and they don't go all the way. So we think there's opportunity. And this is kind of in alignment with some of the stuff the median design team is already working on, of just extending some of those median noses a little bit. Again, and the point of that is just to make we want people to, we want this corridor to be efficient, but at intersections, we want people to turn as slowly as possible, just because the slower someone is turning, the less safe it is for the person turning, the other cars, the other bikes, the other peds. So just like kind of making an intersection as small as possible while keeping it functional is really kind of one of the goals of safety-focused transportation planning. We also have some identified, there's some inconsistency today at the major intersections about where you do and do not have acceleration lanes along the highway so that's for cars like turning right from one of the intersecting roads or turning left. You have a lot of existing acceleration lanes. There are some intersections that don't currently have those. So we've identified some spots and that's also a safety thing. It helps to have an acceleration lane so a turning vehicle can get up to the speed of the highway. So that's another kind of non-bike bed focused safety things we've identified. And
Before you go on.
Yeah.
Just to identify that, thank you. The top one is Rosemary, 88th Rosemary and Quebec Highway 2. And the second one is 104th and Highway 2. Councilmember Ford, you had a question?
Yeah, I do. on intersection safety. I drive this road twice a day, every day. And where I see the biggest conflicts, and I'd be interested in how those accidents occur. Coming off of 104th, 96th, or 88th Avenue, the lack of acceleration lane. What happens is those vehicles come up, you have this nice wide turning radius, no stop, yield on, and as soon as they get their nose out there, they get hit by oncoming traffic because there is zero acceleration lane on any of those intersections when you're turning and going southbound off of any of those three, 104th, 96th, and 88th. And that's where I see a lot of accidents happen, is people come around that corner expecting that there's an accel lane, then that you can get over to the left into the lane. Once they get the nose, whether it's a semi or a car, they get their nose just past the median there and immediately get hit. So I know it was when we built it, it was a right-of-way acquisition issue because of the railroad. But if there's a way to extend those accel lanes, any distance is gonna help. But right now, there is literally zero. So once you come past the median, you're getting the front end of your car taken off.
Yeah.
Any other council members have questions? Sorry, Councilor Dukes?
I guess on this one, just listening to maybe the thought process around 104 specifically, the Highway 2, knowing that the traffic there, the way I'm reading this, you decrease that intersection to one lane and have one turning lane, turning right?
This is not removing any lanes at the intersection. It's just.
It's the little slip lane that goes through between the pork chop and the main.
So this would be, right now, this right turn lane kind of has, the cut through, right? This outside lane would be the right turn lane. It would just be more, it would come up to the intersection instead of having that kind of like this slip.
Oh,
capacity.
Okay. Thank you for explaining that.
Could you explain it to me as well on my screen?
Yeah, so the difference between kind of an existing, right now, at either this intersection or this intersection, if you're the right turn lane today, it kind of.
Which one is this?
This is 104th.
Okay.
So if you're coming northbound, the existing right turn lane is kind of where you see this little, it's kind of like split off. This this wouldn't remove that right turn lane. It would just make it more of a traditional right turn lane where you come up to the actual stoplight and you stop if there's conflicting traffic and you still have the same capacity. It's
Right,
just,
because right now it's a yield.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other thing that I would,
Oh, sorry, I had a.
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thanks for clarifying that, because my concern was like, if we're gonna decrease that lane, which we're not, with the train right here, that would have been a big, just a lot of congestion. That would have been horrible. So thanks for clarifying that, of course.
Councilmember Douglas?
Yeah, I appreciate the clarification as well. The other thing that I've noticed there is, I've seen a lot of I've almost gotten in an accident with the flashing yellow at really, at certain times of the day when it's well traveled, people trying to get across there when they're going to work or whatever. And I don't know if that's something that would be in your
Yeah,
wheelhouse.
there are kind of in tune with these intersections, like the infrastructure, there are signal timing tweaks that we've identified that can be.
Really?
made just-
Okay, yeah, I mean, the flashing yellow works at certain times of the day, but sometimes it's scary.
Yeah.
So just to weigh in on that, Councilmember, absolutely great point about flashing yellows. That's something we'll analyze during and after the transportation master plan. Our lead traffic engineer, Michael Rank, is already looking at that and looking at the data. So appropriate time for that discussion is coming very soon, but
Very good.
great point.
Thank you.
Councilmember Teeter?
I just wanted to clarify, once those medians are put in, barriers, are we looking at raising the speed limit back up?
We'll do speed limits with our TMP
Okay.
and whether or not they need to be adjusted.
So that mean, okay, so there, once you put the medians in, then you're gonna do a study, is what I'm
So the
hearing?
transportation master plan is ongoing right now. We'll have that wrapped up and ready for you all to adopt by the end of the year. And that document will look at speeds here as well as throughout the rest of the city and determine, do they need to stay the same? Do they need to be lowered, or do they need to be raised? So this particular study won't address that.
Yeah.
Everybody goes 55, 60 on
They
it.
are. Exactly.
They
It
go
used to
70 on
No, I
that.
know.
You know, and I wouldn't have a problem putting speed radar in for the ones that wanna go 70. And
But
give them a
they do
damn
anyway.
ticket. Well, they won't after they get a few tickets.
So I had a question here on, over here on 80th and Rosemary, Quebec area there. You get the raised crosswalk. We have a lot of logistic trucks that turn, so they're having a raised sidewalk, crosswalk there. That's gonna be ripped out
Yeah.
because of big trucks. There's already have problems right now. And then, you know, maybe we could look at, go with Dr. Cog or so and get some money to have underneath, a passage underneath the road. Cause it's so dangerous right there. People aren't paying attention to people walking or people riding bikes in that area. Unless the traffic is, as you enter intersections, slow down. The people are aware of their surroundings. Because people try to beat those red lights. Always see cars, not always, but there's been several cars that have been flipped because trying to beat the light, and then the light turns green and bam, so they're on their sides. So if, you know, as far as implementing these suggestions, it has to be where people slow down to recognize that these intersections are multi use. And right now, I mean, this is just a concept here, but just to make sure people are aware, but 88th is just so busy over there.
Sure.
I think if anything, it's just sort of encourage people to cross the intersection. It should be just like what we do with school kids. There's only certain ways you can go across the street. You can't cross at each intersection. You have to walk up to the next block to cross over. And this right here should be just like that too. You shouldn't be able to walk across over there, just because of rail tracks and all that. That's Mayor Duccio.
Yeah, just kind of piggybacking on that. I guess going back to the last slide with the expanded sidewalks, in thinking through this, I'm trying to understand that to the mayor's point, on 88, people are just going because there's no other main road or
80th.
Oh, 80th, yeah. Over by 80th, if you're driving down, you know, Highway 2 and you see expanded expanded sidewalks and people on bikes and walking with the tendency for them maybe slow down a little bit more, is that kind of the vision? So they think about this as more of a neighborhood versus just a highway? Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah, for sure. That was one thing we talked about when we first kicked off this study, is especially on the south part of Highway 2, is that there's been some interest from folks in Commerce City to kind of turn this southern part into more of a, not a highway. Like, I know there's been talk in the past about it, we still want to call it Highway 2 when it's not really a highway anymore, but that's, you know, that's another issue. But trying to kind of make this more of a, not necessarily a main street, because the railroad presence makes it kind of an odd, funky roadway, but making it more indicative of, you're in a city now, you shouldn't be, I mean, the speed limit does already drop in the south part, but trying to make people kind of realize, yeah, you're in a city, there are people walking and biking around here, there are businesses all over the place. You should be driving like you're in kind of like,
Yeah.
maybe not urban, but like almost urban area. So, you know, the more that we can do in terms of like, you know, there's a term, visual friction. So if you just have more stuff next to the roadway, people are going to slow down because they're more hyper aware of, like, because right now Highway 2 is a very open roadway most of the time, and it's very easy to speed. So especially in the south side where we have more dense development, we have more people, opportunities to kind of like, as much as possible, slow people down is another kind of intent of some of this.
Well, and in this concept, if you do take away the lanes, what, I don't know if it's a question for the city or for you around, will we have to put some back, as the city grows, we have to put lanes back in? If you were to take some away, or we'll look at different ways to get people around the core part of the city? Or is that too far down the line to think about?
So I think a statistic we heard a little earlier is a single lane road can easily accommodate up to 20,000 vehicles. And right now we're seeing a condition of around 12. So there's still that buffer. In addition, to your point of wanting to create safer and slower speeds, road diets, reducing lanes naturally makes people
Yeah.
slow down. So that is also one of the reasons for this proposal.
And it's a matter of trade-offs for the city, like for you all, of like, I don't want to say it's not safety versus traffic, but it is like, are we prioritizing? When we heard from the community early on in the study, there was definitely an interest in wanting to be able to make Highway 2 more walkable and bikeable. So there's certainly at a resident level, there is an interest in that. And to really do that, there is a trade-off in terms of the traffic capacity. So, it's kind of like, are we comfortable with making traffic a little bit slower if it's going to be safer, or is the efficiency of Highway 2 our top priority? So that's kind of like, that's above my pay grade about what that decision is.
Well, and visually, it makes it look more like a residential part of the city or part of the city, right?
Councilmember
Yeah.
Ford?
Yeah, when we're talking about the pedestrian traffic along it, one of the places that I notice a ton of pedestrians, also 45 miles an hour, also 4 lanes, is Quebec Street. And 72nd and Quebec has a ton of pedestrians. And people are going 55, 60 down Quebec as well. And I could not support reducing Quebec down to 1 lane going one direction because of the amount of traffic it carries. We have to come up with a way to provide safer crossings. But again, with the amount of dollars to reduce it by a lane, and I think you're a net negative, that we need to figure out better crossing scenarios for people that are using those roadways. Because if we put this road on a diet, then you have to put Quebec on a diet too, because it's the same scenario all the way down past 56 through out of our jurisdiction.
Can I ask a question on that? Is it possible to show a scenario where you still have the 4 lanes, but you increase what you call the visual friction? Like more trees, more things, because that would be a traffic.
Yeah, we
problem.
can let me revisit, see what we can fit within the right of way to not impact lanes, but still, it's tight. It's if we're not impacting the pavement to pavement width, it's pretty tight, but we can explore.
Okay, and then, Seaman?
I think, and take it as you all will, all great comments. I think there's validity to both sides of the argument. I think philosophically what it comes down to is what are the trade-offs the council is willing to live with? Because obviously, right, if you're not willing to live with a road diet, then you're gonna have wider sidewalks in key areas. So I think understanding that if you want to maintain the traffic circulation for Highway 2, then that gives FHU and the PW staff, I guess, better clarification and direction as to thinking about alternatives, knowing that that's an anchor, right? That anchor is not going to shift. So then we build things off of that anchor or other anchors, right, on both sides, so that it comes back with something that's more tailor-made. To that, what we've been responding to, and correct me if I'm wrong, team, we've been responding to the public feedback that we've gotten to this point.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that, but now it's balancing against some of the other realities of what Highway 2 has served in the past and going forward into the future with where the city wants to go. But I think it comes down to you all on that.
And you're saying that, so the public feedback is public feedback is they want to reduce Highway 2. Is that what we're hearing? Like people are okay with that?
That is what we were hearing at the multiple public outreach events, yes.
Okay.
And, to Jason's point, what trade-offs are we willing to make, bearing in mind our limited right of way, right? So if we keep both lanes, that's completely fine, but then we're not going to be able to fit this multi-use path and the buffer between traffic and pedestrians unless we start taking property, which is what we were trying to avoid doing this whole time. So what trade-offs are we willing to make? What can we live with? What do we not want to live with? And it doesn't have to be the direction that, the residents were telling us to go, but we just need to know tonight what the consensus of council is. Yes, sir.
And I think what's also important is back in December of 2022, one of the big things that we were tasked and challenged as an organization was how can we look at community appearance? And community appearance, not just through code enforcement, but also through public improvements, to which you all, and I say you all, the council at the time approved 1.35 million across a number of different efforts. Weed mowing was one of them. Looking at this study was another one. Code enforcement taking on a very different practice of application in the field. So, you know, some of the underlying pinning points were community appearance, public safety, pedestrian, both vehicular. Hence the median discussion that you all took some action on last week. It's like I said, these are really going to be some of these kind of build up conversations to where you're having it now so that my staff can take that back and come back to you all where we really get to that critical decision-making point about, all right, really starting to put some dollars behind some of these actions, but you're at least getting some feedback, you're getting some takeaways, you're getting to understand where and how this was being driven from day one to now. Do you all want to keep going down that path or a modification of it?
Right. So Councilmember Douglas, do you have a question?
Yeah, actually, and I know you want to get to the end of this presentation. And so I'm going to go back to slide 4, where it said that most of the traffic is coming from within Commerce City. But I've been on a road where it's a pass-through. And so I can understand from the people who live here, they want to make it so it's not a pass-through anymore. So the question then is, how do we do that? Because I don't think that most of the traffic coming through here is just from Commerce City. It's maybe during certain parts of the day, but when people are going to work and they picked up their truck from wherever and they're coming through. And we have a lot of trucks that come through here. And they use Highway 2, whether it's to get down Vasquez or wherever it is to get to 70, and they don't necessarily want to go all the way over to 76 and then go around. And so, yeah, how do we accomplish that so we do make it so it's not a pass-through anymore? Is that a valid?
Sure, and I think this is part of that, right?
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. It is part of that.
That's crazy. Councilmember Q.
Yeah, years ago, they did a study and in the morning, everybody's coming from Westminster, Thornton and Erie and wherever, and they're headed to Aurora. In the afternoon, it's just the reverse. They're coming right back and you can just look at the traffic flows on it's obvious from 6 o'clock in the morning until 9 o'clock, traffic is busy. It's all headed south and southeast, and it's just the opposite in the evenings. So it's people coming home from work.
So,
But I wish you would put up a sign on Highway 2 asking the people that use it what their opinion is about the speed limit and give them a number where they can vote.
They don't live here. We don't care.
I don't care. We provide roads for them to pass through our community, and they should think of this as taking care of it and not being a speed trap.
all right. Councilmember Dukes, and then we'll finish this up.
Well, and I know I would love to help provide guidance on next steps. I'm struggling with what I'm hearing, the philosophical conversation we have to have around, do we really make this residential or do we keep it as a highway as it is right now?
Or is it a hybrid when you get out of certain pockets?
Yeah.
I think it's really the south section.
The south section will be the residential part, or this part of it, right? But I guess my struggle is that, to Councilmember Douglas, your point is well taken. But I make the assumption that if we do this, if this direction is taken, right, with the wider sidewalks, the trucks are gonna be probably moved to 76, right? Because this is not gonna be as convenient as much anymore.
Right.
Or they'll move to Quebec. And I don't have the data to say if that's okay or not, right? It'll clean this up, but I mean, this part will be more residential traffic, I would make an assumption. If there's 2 lanes, and I guess I looked at, yeah, that's what I'm wrestling with.
This highway does have, when we look at percentages of trucks as overall traffic, a much higher percentage than like a typical, if you looked at most arterials in the metro area, there's a much higher percentage of like tractor trailers on Highway 2 than there are in most others, even though you have I-76 relatively close by. So there is a lot of truck traffic, which to some people is not ideal, but you know, it's like an important commercial element of our society.
Would you, is it safe to assume that if, or is it okay to assume if you narrow the lanes and widen the sidewalks, some of those trucks might find alternative routes? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, we've done studies in the past where some towns have explicitly done studies to divert truck traffic. Like this is a lot where you have like a CDOT state highway that functions as a town's main street, where they have deliberately built bypasses as truck routes, and they've like some have gone so far as to ban truck traffic on local streets, which I'm not sure that's the right move here, but
I have a question to staff. Since we took over this for maintenance all from the state, do we have to keep it a highway or can we make changes to it?
So it's not a highway until you start to get into that off ramp from Highway 2 onto 85 Vasquez, and you know, that's been a conversation I know they've been having as part of the Vasquez 60th Parkway project. So we have the ability to make changes for a good portion of what's under our control. It really comes down to where do we want to go with that?
Yeah.
Not to sound like a broken record, but the transportation master plan team is also looking at road classifications.
Okay.
So
Well, that's not broken record, that's.
I keep throwing out transportation master plan because I'm really excited about where we're going.
like Highway 2 is the name of the roadway,
Right.
even though it's not, because it used to be a state highway, so that's part of it.
Councilmember Ford, then you go ahead and wrap up.
You know, my biggest concern, I'm worried about reducing that to 1 lane. But when you look at how that 1 lane is, when you have a vehicle that breaks down, flat tire, whatever, there is no place to pull off to repair it. You're gonna sit in the middle of traffic and traffic's gonna back up like crazy. We had a huge problem with that with Quebec because there is no room on the side. There's no side of the road. So you pinch traffic into there, anytime there is a issue with a vehicle, you're stuck behind it. You can't get around.
And so to that, I think, and he raised a couple points. You can narrow the lanes that, right, even a foot or 2 here or there get you some greater benefits on the edges. But I think even in that context it's still a philosophical shift of going from a 11-foot travel lane to a smaller travel lane to gain benefits on the size or in the medians. And I'll leave that up to you to kind of explain that, but.
I'm just struggling with it because we had a problem with Quebec was a 2-lane road. Highway 2 was a 2-lane road. And now Quebec is a 4-lane road and some places a 6-lane road. And Highway 2 is now a 4-lane road because everybody was complaining because it was a 2-lane road. And now we're looking to go back to a 3-lane road. I have some real heartburn about reducing that down to 1 lane northbound.
Councilmember Chacon?
Just listening to the conversation, unless we're going to ban truck traffic from that space, I don't think it's wise to narrow it. And I think that it's already used to that type of capacity. Most of the time the speeding is the trucks themselves. And I think if we narrow it, you're actually going to be creating more vehicular accidents. So I'm curious if we can, for at least sections of it, start considering just smaller transit, weight limits, things like that, are to the point of eventually banning truck traffic from that space if it's going to be residential anyway.
Thank you. Councilmember Kim?
Thank you, Mayor. So I agree with also Councilwoman Chacon. I think that, I mean, the majority of it is we have a lot of big rigs that are going down that area. And to her point, I don't think that honestly, until we actually limit the size or limit the weight or limit just, having them go down there, I don't think it's feasible I don't think it makes any sense to drop this down to 3-lane road. But I also understand, trying to make it look aesthetically pleasing, I guess, to make it more look like a neighborhood. But I mean, seriously, I mean, if we're not banning, or reducing the size and weights of these big rigs coming through, dropping this down to a 3-laner doesn't make any sense to me. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Douglas,
Yeah, I
Councilmember
just
Douglas,
had
and
a
then
Quick
go ahead and
question.
continue, and then we'll take up questions after.
Where would it, from what street to what street would it be?
So this
Just
is,
one lane?
yeah, the extents are 60, I think it's 67th where we've kind of drawn it up as starting and then up to,
Up to 80th, I think we're gonna go
Up
that.
to 80th. Wow.
yeah, 80th slash. Essentially where, kind of like filling in that gap of where the trail, so it would go up to where the trail starts. So kind of like making that continuous.
And
nice-
would that be on the west side or the east side?
It would all this would be on the east side of the highway.
East side.
And I don't want to just get confused what I said earlier, right? You can still keep 2 lanes. The lanes right now are 11 feet wide. It's narrowing it down from 11 feet wide down to 10 feet wide. That gives you 2 feet of extra play without having to take property, still keeping the northbound traffic, southbound traffic. But you can look at how you do that within the medians or the road. So that's something that they did call out as an alternative. To have alternative to that where you still get that effect without having to sacrifice that move.
So one more quick question with that, with narrowing, would that, be more prohibitive for truck traffic?
Say it again?
With narrowing it from how many feet to the 10 feet, would that be more prohibitive for truck traffic to go
It
through
would
there?
be more uncomfortable for a truck driver. 10 feet is kind of like the minimum,
For the trucker.
minimum lane width you'll see anywhere. And yeah, that's ultimately like Public Works to decide what lane width they're comfortable with. There are a lot of 10-foot lanes in the Denver metro area on streets that trucks use. So it doesn't make it impossible for a truck, but one of the benefits, if we're kind of shifting away from the road diet concept, narrow lanes have been proven to slow traffic just because you feel more confined. So that can kind of like get us to that similar target of slowing traffic down. Maybe it would still convince some truck drivers to find an alternate path if they don't like the 10-foot lane. So it wouldn't make it impossible for them to use. It would make it, everyone have to be able to.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead and finish the.
Okay. What kind of makes sense? Okay, this kind of gets to something I think someone brought up earlier is back to the crossings of the highway. This maybe becomes more important if we feel like maintaining the capacity of Highway 2 is really critical to the future of Commerce City, then kind of funneling bike ped traffic, encouraging bike ped traffic to more kind of use the local street network and just keep going up to Highway 2 when they need to cross. And so this is, there are a number of locations already along the highway where there are designated pedestrian crossings. The concern with the existing ones today, so they're at 64th, 74th, or 67th, 74th in Quebec. Right now, those are configured as what's called an RRFB. So if you use them, you push the button and then there's the flashing light and then, cars are supposed to yield to you. Those are usually recommended for streets that are a little bit slower and a little bit less busy than Highway 2, especially up in Quebec where you start widening out and getting faster. Kind of the upgraded version of that it's called a hawk signal. You can also just do a standard pedestrian signal. It's essentially a traffic signal. So it has a much higher yielding behavior. A lot of people, there have been studies, I'm gonna get the percentage wrong, but I think in general, the yielding behavior at an RFB crossing has been found to be about 65%, which isn't great. It means, a lot of people are having to wait when they should have the right of way, cars aren't stopping. A hawk signal or a pedestrian signal is not almost 100%, because it has a red, the benefit of a hawk or a pedestrian signal, it has a red icon. So people associate red with stopping. So, on a corridor with the speeds and the volumes of Highway 2, that's generally what's recommended when you look at kind of pedestrian crossing guidance from the FHWA or something. So one recommendation is to just upgrade your several existing RFB crossings to hawk signals. The other potential recommendation we're considering is, like someone mentioned earlier, you already have an underpass of the railroad today for people to get under the railroad. There is not a grade separated crossing of Highway 2 today, so that means either a pedestrian overpass or an underpass. And Highway 2, kind of regardless of what we do, it's always going to be a busy street. It's always going to be, a pedestrian is always going to be a little bit uncomfortable crossing, not just Highway 2, any highway in the Denver area. And so if we can just totally eliminate that conflict, just like let bikes and peds go over the road or under the road, it makes us, cars don't have to yield them anymore. Bike peds don't have to watch for cars. And there is an underpass of the highway is probably tough in this situation because there are, you have a lot of creeks in this area. The floodplain is a real concern, and in any kind of underpass, not to say it's impossible, but it'd also be a pretty long underpass, just how wide Highway 2 is. It seems like an overpass might be the more feasible, not to say it's easy, but the more feasible option. And there is an existing location kind of aligned with 75th Place along the highway today, where you essentially have two kind of dead end cul-de-sacs that one ends at the railroad, one ends at the highway. It seems like kind of like an ideal opportunity to explore the feasibility and the configuration of an overpass more clearly. There's no houses in the way. There's a lot of houses backing up, especially next to the railroad, so it limits where you're able to put one. But it seems like an option to consider further. And what that looks like, they can look like this one you see in the photo. This is at Wadsworth and Bowles down in Littleton. There's similar ones along I-25 at all the light rail stations. So it would be a large structure, especially because it has to cross the railroad, and they have pretty high clearances requirements for it. It has to be, I think it's like almost 20 feet in the air so it's pretty high up, but it's something that we feel like is worth considering if we're if we're not wanting to, make as much impact at the signalized intersections and really funnel people to kind of like a totally conflict-free connection. That's something.
The height requirement for that, as Mike just shared, would be 23 feet, but then we have to consider cost, right? Something like that's going to cost
Yes.
a minute. I mean, Mike and I were talking earlier, a rough estimate's 20 million for a
Yes.
pedestrian overpass.
Say
So we would
20
need-
million?
No, not for the pedestrian overpass. That's where we're doing grade separated.
Oh, excuse me.
It's probably more like 5, context depends, but 5 to 10 million. So that's where, there are a lot of, federal grant, federal grants. are
So
changing,
5,
but
better than 20, but still 5.
Federal grant, that are really focused on connections just like this. So, you probably don't have $5 million within your city budget to build this, but there are resources out there to do something like this.
Yeah, okay, good.
We did a study to put in a pedestrian overpass like that, 69th Avenue and Highway 85, to be able to get, when Adams City High School was still there, to get the school kids to be able to cross across it. And it was way over 5 million, and that was 15 years ago, maybe longer. Because of the new ADA requirements. Brighton has the one over 85, and people see it going down 85. But with the new ADA requirements, it requires those huge ramps, and the amount of right of way and the length of those ramps and the grade that those ramps have to be at for handicapped people to be able to access that crossing made it totally out of our ballpark to be able to afford. I can only imagine what the cost is today of just doing the medians on Quebec Street from Highway 2 to 72nd Avenue is like $3 million a piece. I don't know how. Yeah, I mean, I know I look at Colorado Boulevard, a lot of other roads in our city that have to be fixed, no sidewalks, no nothing. To get to that and justify the expenditure to our residents would be really hard to do.
Certainly a long-term recommendation.
Councilmember Teeter?
Back to that, I think we had somebody up around on the Highway 36 that there used to be one going across there. They was gonna let us have that if we just took it down for them, because the pedestrians refused to use it. I mean, it was just too hard to get up there and back down, and they just wasted millions of dollars. And I don't know what happened to theirs, but we never did get one over here. But back to the trucks on Highway 2. But we got more trucks than you guys realize between 80th Avenue and 104th Avenue, between Highway 2 and I-76. I mean, most of those trucks going down Highway 2 are local trucks. And from FedEx to Safeway to, I mean, there was a lot of business in there, in that median area where we pick up at. And it's a big hassle trying to get onto Highway 2, because when you come from 96 to 88 to 104th, if you're coming eastbound on any of those intersections and you need to make a right turn to get back into the metro area, you have to take up 3 lanes to make that right turn. So in other words, you got railroad tracks here. And so you can't just go up there and wait for traffic to clear while your trailer's sitting on the railroad tracks. You have to park behind the railroad tracks. And then when it's clear, you gotta go. But if you got a line in front of you and you only get halfway and you gotta stop because they're trying to get on because they don't have a ramp, now your trailer's sitting up on the railroad tracks while you're waiting for them to move. And I mean, it's a challenge, but something that would help is they wouldn't have to go out 3 lanes to make that turn, to make sure their 53-foot trailer gets around there. If we could put more where the trailer's gonna be coming across, we could widen that part a little bit so they wouldn't have to go out so far. It'd be, and that way the people in the outside lane would still be able to go while they was coming out. You wouldn't have to block traffic there. But that's something to think about.
We can tell where your heart is.
So I was
Well,
gonna say
this is just common sense stuff that I'm talking.
Since, this is only supposed to take a half hour, but you guys.
Well, I know, but they
talked
keep
about
on
this
bringing
and-
up, they're wanting to get rid of
So I
trucks.
saw a half hour here, that was like, that's like, I think a lot longer than that. Just kind of sum it up, it seems to me 10-foot lanes be sufficient. There's some like a consensus, everybody wants to make sure you keep those lanes. Cause it's gonna be so hard later on, even if we come back to put an extra lane in, going northbound, the cost. Gonna be a lot. So I would say, just from listening to everybody, to squeeze it down to 10, messaging to force those trucks to go down Quebec or down 88 to 76. So we can start really teaching the logistic world a new way to get around this corridor. And then kind of give it more of a urban feel instead of a highway feel.
And what we'll do is take all this feedback, we hear you, we won't, do you want to?
Just a question, because I heard this, but I don't know if it was clear. Are you also wanting to look at if there's ways to create less stress pedestrian and bike facilities adjacent to these roadways without having to take property and or use the additional feet from reducing the lanes?
I agree, Councilmember Dukes.
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea of being able to connect the path from 104th down to 64th, right? I love the idea of that connectivity, having the walkways a little bit more expanded. I do agree with what the mayor is saying with narrowing down from 11 to 10. But I would love to have that scenario plus conversation with businesses to see if that's even, to see what are some alternatives that we can work through and talk through for trucking. Because it is a bread and butter heart of our city. So we want to bring them into the conversation at some point and see how we can find some middle ground.
Councilmember Chacon, are you okay with this? Those suggestions?
Yes, I was just trying to highlight, today I was able to send to the city manager, and I believe I sent to you too, Mayor, was a non-attainment area pollution mitigation enterprise that's seeking applications for specifically projects in non-attainment areas, which this would be from 80th to 72nd. I'm talking about the raised bridge is what I'm kind of referencing right now. And it's to completely or partially fund projects that support DIC and business purposes of the enterprise. So I know that's a large tag for 5 to 10 million, but it's also a way that we can possibly work with RTD for connectivity to provide a different transportation choice and still keep some of the trucks for the business space, but it also becomes an actually pedestrian friendly space and ADA compliant too. So I just wanted to highlight that project that's completely still for funding here in Colorado and we are all within a non-attainment DIC, and that specific location is for reducing air for mitigation too. So.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Kim, are you okay with the 10-foot wide, keep it all 4 lanes? And then enhancing the pedestrian and bike route on the east side of the highway?
Yes, and also I would please look into additional lighting if that's possible along that stretch. More energy efficient preferably, please.
Right, thank you. Councilmember Douglas, you okay with this?
Yeah.
Councilmember Ford?
For the most part.
Yeah. Councilmember Teeter?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you, appreciate that. Yeah.
Thank you, man.
Okay, on to another heavy topic. 96th Avenue Sound Wall feasibility and direction discussion. And
Hi, everyone, I'm back.
up the deck.
The keyboard's not letting me.
Did I break it? Sorry.
No, you didn't break it.
So it just felt like
Is it just queued up to go into the next presentation? No, this isn't working either. No, it is. Okay. It is harder to see from back here. I won't lie. I can't believe I just said that out loud. Fit to screen, is that what I'm on?
Are you trying to put full screen here?
You can see, okay. Your glasses are better than mine. Thank you, Matthew.
Okay. Yeah, thank
you.
Thank you.
All right. Mayor, City Council, this evening we will be talking about the 96th Avenue Sound Wall feasibility and direction from you all on how to move forward. So just a quick summary of our overall 96th Avenue widening project that you all are very familiar with. That project is going to improve East 96th Avenue from Chambers to Tower Road. That project's going to include a 4-lane road with a median divided roadway, associated sidewalks, lighting, landscaping, and of course, utilities. There is our future discussion coming up for the potential pedestrian underpass for 96 and Reunion, but we'll discuss that on a later evening. So this map here is important because it shows you the project area for not only our 96th Avenue widening project, but also the area that the noise study we're about to discuss looked at. So this shows you the parameters, Chambers to Tower, but I would like to point out that the noise study, that study zone extended 300 feet in all directions from the edge of the proposed travel zone that you see here. So we looked and 300 feet in all directions from 96th Avenue widening project. So the noise analysis overview that we have for you, some history here is this noise study came at the request of council. Staff did hire a consultant to perform that noise study to assess noise levels that will be generated on 96th Avenue after that widening project is completed. So this noise study looked at a number of factors. So it looked at what reductions in noise levels could be achieved if we were to construct sound walls, how many homes would benefit from the installation of sound walls, and what the cost would be per beneficiary if we were to construct those sound walls. So what is a beneficiary? So we draw a lot from what CDOT and the FHWA tell us in Public Works, and we specifically did that for this noise study. So CDOT defines a beneficiary as someone who will receive at least 5 decibel reduction from noise mitigation efforts. So anybody who receives a reduction of 5 decibels or more is therefore considered a benefited receptor. We'll hear that phrasing a lot throughout this presentation. CDOT also looks at consideration of cost to construct the sound wall, so we pulled from their methodology as well. So per CDOT, we would need to be looking at a cost of no greater than $34,000 per benefited receptor to construct sound walls. And there's a nice definition of cost effectiveness if you care to look into the language that CDOT and FHWA use. So again, that noise analysis was completed in accordance with CDOT's and the FHWA's different studies that they provide for the state of Colorado and other states in the US to follow. So that analysis included activities such as conducting field measurements of existing conditions, validating the existing conditions using field measurement results, modeling existing conditions, modeling proposed actions for the design roadway, evaluating noise abatement, and modeling distances for unpermitted, undeveloped land. So what does that all really mean, right? So in this analysis of the noise report, we took all of this work that CDOT or that our consultant did, and we then took a step back and asked ourselves, where would it actually make sense to put in these sound walls, right? We looked at the map a couple slides ago, but several of the homes that would be impacted by those sound walls actually face the front of the roadway. So when in the map analysis here on the west and east sides of the roadway that we'll look at in a couple of slides, we did not consider building sound walls in front of 34 homes on the eastern section of the road and 43 homes on the western section. And that's because those properties have front yards that face the roadway, and staff's perspective is that building noise walls in front yards would likely not be well received by the community. And those noise walls, depending on where they do ultimately get constructed, would range from 8 to 14 feet in height. So they would certainly obstruct views regardless of whether they're placed in front or backyards of properties. We also looked at the western and eastern segments as one segment each, rather than breaking them down further by home type and neighborhood, which is what you saw in the attached noise analysis. And we did that because, again, from a staff perspective, it didn't make sense to install sound walls with a piecemeal approach. We felt it would make more sense to install them in longer segments or not at all in order to avoid gaps in sound walls. So in most areas, if we were to move forward with sound walls, just to help you all visualize what this would look like, right? We'd have the noise wall constructed, and then we'd have a 2 to 3 foot gap, which would essentially become an alleyway or a noise tunnel. And then we'd have private fences, and then we'd have homes. And the cost estimates that we're going to look at the upcoming slides do not consider costs for relocating those existing private fences, relocating utilities, or potential land acquisition costs. So that's just something to bear in mind when we're thinking about what it would cost to erect these sound walls. So here is what the western sound wall segment would be, again, taking out those 43 front-facing homes. So that leaves us with 12 beneficiaries of the sound wall. The projected cost of just construction is $635,000. Which breaks down to $53,000 per beneficiary, which of course is greater than CDOT's recommendation of $34,000 or less per beneficiary. That said, if we were to add in the 43 front-facing homes, then that cost per beneficiary would come down from $53,000 to $11,545. So depending on where you want to put the walls, CDOT guidelines would say it is or is not warranted. Same concept here on the eastern sound walls. These numbers do not include the 34 front-facing homes. So in this scenario, we'd have 30 beneficiaries and a cost of $1.1 million for the construction of the sound walls. This breaks down to $39,000 per beneficiary. If we add back in the 34 front-facing homes, then that cost reduces to $18,000 per beneficiary. So again, whether or not we include that front-facing home group dictates whether or not the cost per CDOT terms warrants a sound wall. So there's a good conversation that we need to have around next steps, right? Because staff looked at this through the lens of what would CDOT and the FHWA recommend that we do? What would CDOT do if it were their roadway? What would another municipality in Colorado do? Because we simply don't have a policy about sound walls. So we leaned on some pretty pretty solid existing policies, but that doesn't mean we can't depart from what CDOT and staff is recommending, right? So our recommendations to you are purely based on what CDOT guides us to do. So because the construction costs for those sound walls surpass the threshold from CDOT and FHWA, we don't recommend moving forward with sound walls for noise abatement for that project. However, council absolutely has the ability to direct staff to move forward with constructing sound walls separate from CDOT's guidelines. So we would then ask you, which segments are you interested in funding? And we would then go ahead and work with a contractor to conduct public meetings with the beneficiaries of those proposed sound walls. And per CDOT guides, we would be seeking approval of 50% or more of residents who would have these sound walls put in either their front or backyards. And again, that's per CDOT guidelines. If you all don't want to pursue resident buy-in, we don't have to do that. So really what it comes down to is, do you want to build sound walls? Yes or no? If so, do you want to put them along the whole roadway? Do you want to take the staff approach of only constructing them where they wouldn't be in the front of yards? Do you want us to seek residential support or not? Right, so there's a larger conversation that we want to have with what your policy approach will be to sound walls, not only for 96th Avenue, but for the rest of the city, right? Because whatever we decide to do here is a model that we'll have to follow elsewhere. So a lot of information, but this is intended to be a discussion on what council desires to do.
Okay, can I ask the question? Was this even brought up in the neighborhood discussion first? Before it came to this point?
No, because the direction that we received at the time from council was to conduct the noise study. We would then come back to you all with the results, which is what we're doing now. So residents have not been engaged outside of, you know, if any of them saw and provided comment in response to the study session material.
Yeah, I would like, I mean, I'm gonna hold mine, Councilmember Ford, then I go to Councilmember Kim.
For me, number one, after reading through the material, the noise study, I don't think covered a big enough span of time to get an accurate reading of exactly what the noise is like. I think we have to have a 24-hour scenario on a work day to understand the significance of the noise. Number two, I'm a person that's all for what the residents choose. And so if you were gonna put a sound wall in front of my house and I was front facing, I would lose my mind over it. So I would really like to know those that would be affected, what their opinion of it is before we go forcing something on them or spending a bunch of money that they really don't want to have in front of their house. So I need more information, especially the beneficiaries. I think I need to know what percentage of them are supportive or opposed to it.
Councilmember Kim?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, similar to what I think Councilmember Ford and what I think Mayor's alluding to, I think having to obtain residential support or opposition would be also the next steps to make this ideal. But I also wonder, I mean, we're talking, if let's say hypothetically this was going to go through, I'm assuming those sound walls would be placed after the widening of 96 from Chambers to Tower. Is that right?
That is correct. So this would be constructed after the 16-month roughly period of construction we'll have for the widening project, which is currently slated to kick off on March 10th.
So then my other thought too is while we see the recommendations as to where those sound walls could go, that's based off of the correct me if I'm wrong, but that's basically based off the the two-way traffic that we get going east and west currently, right? It's not going to be, I mean, because I don't know what it would look like, I guess, from the aspect of when you widen when you widen 96, how much more traffic you're going to get in that area to how much more noise will be potentially produced in that area as well.
Councilmember Douglas and then Councilmember Dukes.
So I drove 96 the other day, going from Highway 2 to Tower. And I, especially, well, when you get to Tower, it's like, it seems to me the development there wasn't well thought out. And I don't know how you're gonna widen this when it gets to Tower with East Point being so close to the road. I mean, and at one point they had parking there in front. Which I'm glad they took out because that was a menace. And to me, more than sound, the safety is of a concern to me, although I have had constituents. I actually went to their home in one of the townhomes that facing south.
Rocky.
We were out front on their porch. I couldn't hear a word they were saying because there was so much traffic and so much, it was just really loud. I know with the high school going in over there and everything, I suppose we're gonna have to widen it, but again, we're supporting the truck traffic over there, coming through. And I almost feel like we should really look at figuring out some truck routes to get,
That is a truck route.
re-examining the situation to maybe think of another place and the trucks could go. I know that there used to be Buckley Road going back around through there, and that's been closed down. So I definitely want resident input. That is imperative to me.
Councilmember Dukes?
Thanks for the work, putting all this together and doing this sound study. A couple things, I think the cost is too high. I think when all said and done, for 42 beneficiaries, it's gonna be around $2 million if we take out the fences and do the construction on that. It could be,
Yes, that's a good back of the napkin estimate. If we have to relocate utilities, which we don't know until we go in to do survey work, that would certainly increase the cost.
yeah.
If we have to do that.
So cost is a big issue for me on that. For 42 beneficiaries, it seems like a lot, or it is a lot. I would love to get residents buy-in and support, not just on those who are gonna be, their backyard impacted, but also those with the potential of having a front yards, like try to figure out if there's a way to get everyone's input, so it can lower the cost. But then also if there's a way to have that conversation, I don't know if there is, but after the construction. So to the Councilmember Kim's point, four lanes, I think maybe folks who originally don't like the idea of the wall in front of their house, after hearing all the traffic, they may be more, prone to say, yeah, we might want some type of sound barrier. So, yeah, I'd love to get people's input. Cost is pretty expensive. I think it's too expensive for 42 beneficiaries. And then figuring out the balance of getting their feedback while the construction is taking place or a little bit after to get a better sense of who really wants it.
And we can certainly engage residents at any point, and it can include the folks that, approximately 80 front-facing houses. We can reach out to whoever council desires, and we can certainly do that now or in the thick of construction.
I guess my recommendation with the front-facing house is if there's a way you could give them a projection of how much sound would be. If you can't wait until, or if we decide not to wait until it's fully constructed, but I would love to get, if they really be interested, knowing that this is coming, they may change their tune or may think about something, but it'll help with the cost a lot.
And something that would be helpful for us to know from council is what percentage of buy-in are we looking for residents? Are we looking for the 50% that CDOT's asking for? Are we looking for less? Are we looking for more? That's feedback we would need.
I'm okay with the 50% if that's CDOT's recommendation. And if there's a clear outreach, like you can communicate, here's a clear outreach, which you will, I'm okay with that.
Councilmember Ford, you okay, 50%?
My worry is if you have 50% that want it, that means you have 50% that don't want it. So you build a sound wall and the 50% that don't want it are gonna be unhappy.
No, just saying as far as getting to the study, so we do a public outreach and get 50%, so.
Well, if we're gonna spend that kind of money on that few homes, I want to know that there's significant support for the project before we do it, because
Full support then.
yeah, more than 50, but
Are you
I
okay?
need to know they're significant.
Councilmember Doug's with 100%, I mean, the majority of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Councilmember Teeter?
I don't think it qualifies for a sound wall, but it's been, it's what, 40 mile an hour tops going through there. And traffic's not that heavy. It's nowhere near
Oh.
270's traffic. I mean, 270 qualifies for a sound wall when they modify it, in my opinion. I don't think this qualifies, and we're also looking at putting up, or making an ordinance to make Jake brakes, put mufflers on Jake brakes for all trucks, and you get a ticket if you use it with that muffler. So I'm against it, I guess.
Thank you. Councilmember Campbell?
As someone who's driven on 96 Avenue, it's similar to the same speed people are going down Highway 2, or if not more, especially on 96. I think, Ms. Han, I think the only thing I would say is I think, well, let me back up your two mayors question. I think more than 50% would be something I'd be interested in as well. Not just 50%, but whatever higher, I guess the majority would be ideal. But I know just recently I just submitted that C-Click Fix action to please take a look at that other area on 96, just west of Landmark Drive and just east of Old Buckley Road where that bridge is. Especially if they're talking about widening that area out. Let's say hypothetically a sound wall is going to go up. I would say that maybe that might be ideal. That might be an ideal spot, because that to me is, especially when you're heading down eastbound, and it's almost like a Dukes of Hazzard roadway. Basically, it seems like someone could go fly off of that. Similar to the Highway 2 just north of the Bison Ridge Rec Center. So that's my only comment. Thank you.
And, you know, for that, just in general, we could certainly look at conducting a study, not for sound walls, because sound walls are not the appropriate traffic barrier to install. We have concerns with vehicles going off roadways, but we could do a guardrail study, but that is dictated by the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials. So that would be the most appropriate way to look at that area, which I'll get that C-Click response in, as well as any other areas where we're concerned about vehicles going off the roadway. Now, that said, you know, we do think that by completing 96 Avenue through this widening project, adding the lighting, adding the sidewalk, adding the landscaping, it should mitigate the current risk we're seeing where drivers are failing to realize that there is a curve condition. So we do think that will naturally be improved with the current scope of the 96 Avenue project.
And just, we do have a guardrail shown as part of the plans. I think on the section that you were talking about, Councilmember Kim, just east of the bridge, eastbound as it starts to curve back to the left, we do have a guardrail shown there, which I think is the area that has the biggest issue.
Oh, that awesome. Thank you. Appreciate that. If I can get information on that, please. Thanks. Sorry.
Councilmember Stone, are you okay with getting public input for more than 50%?
Yes, for more than 50% though.
Okay. So, I just want to say that if we do this study, the folks between on 96 going westbound between Nuclear and Chambers, you have a section over there, have been begging for some sort of sound mitigation, whether it's walls or trees, something that's going to take away the noise, because the decibels over there are really as high too. We might want to consider having a conversation with a section of that area.
And
between
expand the
Nuclear
scope of
and
outreach.
Sharon, yes, because that way they've been asked this for a long time, years. And so we don't want to make improvements for one and later other ones say, hey, you know, we've been living here so many years and now you're going to give favoritism to that, right? So we want to make sure this is done. We actually add them, add that group of people or homes in there with the study. And then if there is construction, I would recommend that it does, that if it does happen, it happens at the same time as the construction of the road. That way it's not delayed. Because if you wanna go through that, and then again, how far depressed are the homes? Because the sound wall may not be as high as needed if those homes are much
Right.
lower than the street.
The elevation conditions change throughout that corridor, so we're looking at sound walls that would range from 8 to 14 feet in the project area we looked at, depending on where those elevations lie.
Yeah, so by the sound of it, if we have a, neighborhood study, because that way you can actually convey to people what it would look like too, because we have a perfect example on Highway 2 and 96 of sound walls over in Eagle Creek. There's sound walls right there. So, everybody okay?
Does anyone know the history of those?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
The road was it was to widen Highway 2. There wasn't enough space, so because they encroached so close to the backyards, the developer was required to put that wall in to mitigate sound, but also for safety, so that a car leaving Highway 2 wouldn't end up in somebody's house.
And then the residents were okay with that, or was it a part of the
He
development?
did it so early on in the development that there wasn't a lot of people already living in those homes, so they bought them with the wall behind them.
Plus they updated them too.
Yeah.
City council didn't plan well on that.
When would,
That was our
be
first.
able to develop, meet with the
Yeah.
We didn't have right away.
residents?
We would need to determine if we engage assistance to with that stakeholder outreach, or if we do that internally with community relations, so I'm not sure what that timing would be.
I would give it 2 or 3 months, Mayor. I don't think it's gonna be immediate, right? We're talking individual homes. We're not talking large communities. We're talking trying to get access to them. If we're looking at expanding to the portion that you spoke about, I say that conservatively. If it happens faster, it happens faster, but conservatively, just try to manage expectations.
Oh, sure. I mean, I would think you're gonna do a couple of weeks. But I'm just saying, as far as Buffalo Highlands, put out, because Buffalo Highlands is pretty active. If you put out the Buffalo Highlands, you want all the community to be involved with that.
Yeah.
And to a certain extent.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're looking for 50% or more of the benefited receptors, right, that's a lower number than, just the general community that comes out. If you're looking for the general community, if they're gonna support that, I think that's different. As we start to think about, I'm not trying to overcomplicate this, right? You've got developers that will ultimately build residential product along their portion of the road, along those portion of roads. So now you're then adding a new variable as time goes on that will say, as you were just calling out earlier, I see my neighbors down on the street. I want that treatment too, but that treatment may no longer exist when it comes time for them to build their multifamily or their single family attached or detached. So I'm not, like I said, I'm not trying to make this more complex, but if you're looking at this on a bigger picture, then look at it in a bigger picture, more comprehensive in nature than just.
Well, and with this, it may be, we may have to do some type of setback with the build out of 96. So when developers come in, they would have to build a certain distance back to alleviate, putting sound walls and all that. Just something to think about. Councilmember Ford?
Yeah, on that note, I was thinking that if a developer is gonna build up to a roadway that's significant, like 96th Avenue, that if they're going to push the envelope and put them further out, then require that developer to put the sound wall in.
Yeah.
Instead of it being us. Set it back far enough where it's not gonna be an impact. If you wanna utilize that property, you're gonna have to put a sound wall in to get those extra homes in. But put it back on the developer when it comes to the sound wall. At least that's my
No,
opinion.
I
Otherwise,
agree.
we'll be going all over through town building sound walls.
No, I
But
agree.
Eagle Creek, that developer had to build that sound wall to be able to build those homes. There should be a distance from certain roadways
Yeah.
that are significant in nature, that'll create the kind of noise we're talking about. If they're gonna build that close to the road, have them put the sound walls in.
Okay, Councilmember Kim?
Just my opinion.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess to that point, what Councilmember Ford is saying, you put that back on the developers. What I'm afraid of is like we might be getting charged more than what it typically would cost. And actually that would have to that would probably be funded through a metro district back to the residents, is what my concern is, i.e. I believe Reunion and the traffic light several years ago, if I'm not mistaken. But just want to go back really quick though, regarding the additional public meetings, Ms. Jenna. I would ask you to please coordinate with the neighborhoods, especially like the Frontera, East Point, Second Creek, Buffalo Highlands, as the mayor had mentioned. I mean, I'm pretty sure a lot of these should have a Metro District board or even an HOA board that you might be able to jump through to start those discussions regarding a sound wall. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Kim.
May I ask council a clarification question that City Manager Rogers asked? It's what extent of public outreach are we looking at, right? Because if it's a whole neighborhood wide, that's very different than just talking to the homes who would have the sound walls in either their rear or front yards. So we need to understand what the expectation is, so we make sure we deliver when we're engaging residents.
I would say for the sound wall, we're intended to go would be the focus point, because we're not gonna put any sound walls on the homes that are facing 96. We asked them not to park on 96. So they couldn't be, that wouldn't make sense to put a sound wall right there that's 14 feet high or 8 feet high in front of, just like where you're at right there, the road's right here. So it would, to me, it would be on the south side of 96, and then as you go up across from the Arsenal, on the north side of Frontier. That's where sport.
Yeah, I think it should be the identified beneficiaries in the presentation. Both those that are identified with rear facing yards, but also those with front facing yards. So all beneficiaries depicted in your presentation are the ones that I think I want to hear from the most.
Councilmember Reduce.
I agree with all beneficiaries that are identified front face and the rear. I do think while you're updating the 96, when you have community engagement with 96 expansion, talk about the sound walls as a part, because I think cosmetically, folks who might even want to know like what it looks like, but as far as data coming back, the 50% or more should be beneficiaries.
Councilmember Douglas.
Yeah, same thing, and there are always community leaders in every neighborhood that a lot of us know. And we can certainly reach out to them and let them know and connect you with those people, so the word can get out as much as possible for the people who are directly impacted.
Yeah, we'll do targeted campaigns and make sure the right folks are addressed, absolutely.
And I don't think it's a problem to include this Someone association for East Point and then for Reunion, just so they know that there's a meeting. If they want to attend, they can come. Because as we know, we have a neighborhood meeting. For those who are concerned, we'll show up. Not everybody shows up. So, but at least we have to make an effort, which you guys are, so I appreciate that.
I think the only challenge with that is that they'll have to clearly say like in this case, your opinion won't matter if you're not a part of the beneficiaries. And so that's the talk that I have.
It's just that it's a public meeting. So basically, if someone's informed about coming, we can't tell them they can't be there. And they will know this is the area that we're talking about. Once this presentation is once as far as beneficiary and how this affects them, because that's been identified as a key areas to have sound walls. So there won't be any sound walls on that north side of 96.
No, I hear
that corridor.
I hear what you're
Except when you
saying.
go up, when you go west, that's why I'm asking.
And I hear what you're saying, and I agree. I guess that's what I throw out to see, man, if they're okay with being clear on, you have a bigger group meeting with HOAs and people may show, but then they'll just have to be really clear on like, we've given you information, but we really need to get a vote or support from those who are gonna be, and if that's okay. I mean, so more information is good, but you have to be clear on.
I guess a simple way of playing this out, right? 50% of the beneficiaries, you know where their opinion stays. It has weight, it has value. It has, positive or negative movement on this potential project. When you think about it in a broader sense with a community, their opinions are going to have a place, but it's gonna be more informative, not necessarily, you know, a collaborative, which is what you're looking for here, because someone who maybe lives 4 or 5 rows in within a community, the sound walls aren't going to necessarily change their day to day. To the point, right? But you then start to, I'll call it what it is, you start to create an expectation that that informative aspect is going to have bearing. And when it doesn't come to bearing, you'll receive emails, you'll get calls, you'll get phone calls, which it comes with your role, but right, it doesn't change the course of action. And now there's a lot more work up front about how you create and manage that expectation from a staff standpoint going into that public meeting than focusing on these individuals who are going to benefit, right? That meet the calculation, both do it, have it now and or propose facing toward it, would like to have it, where we can actually look on that return on investment that's being guided by state practice as well as federal. So I would just keep that in the back of the mind that you don't want to create a situation where it gives a false expectation to those who aren't going to benefit it from the day-to-day basis.
I mean, is that okay with your staff? That's my, I guess I bring it up because I don't mind more information. I think that's great to invite the neighborhood groups. And when you talk about widening 96, I think it's a great idea in general. But is you and your team okay with like having the extra work, knowing that and being clear about that?
Whether you, I don't know if it's necessarily more work.
Okay.
It's different. It's obviously different planning to where, yes, you're inviting all of the individuals there, but you're going to be pinning on those that are within that 50% benefit recipient. I will tell you, it's going to be more about how will council respond when the larger community comes back and says, well, outside of this 50%, they said no, but we really want it. Now you've got a divergent voice in the room that you're gonna have to navigate. And I'm just calling that out for your consideration because you know they're not going to all be on the same page. And that's just the reality of community, right? Divergent voices, gotta love it. But it's understanding that that's gonna be a point in time where when it comes to you all to make that funding decision, yes or no, you're gonna have to balance between that.
Right.
That's all.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Your free time, guys. Is Libby Tar here?
Yes.
Or yes.
That way.
Oh, wow. Oh, my goodness. This is a new favorite.
Used to be over there, they seem.
New setup. Wow.
I didn't want you to go without having them drop to the floor.
Thank you. Okay.
All right, energy, equity and environment, 2024 quarterly update. Libby Tart, Senior Environmental Planner. Thank you.
So my sad eyes from here. Okay. And then do I go down all the way in the corner? Is that where the blowing of the, it's right here. It's right there. Thank you. And then here. And down here. Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much.
I'm just two spreadsheets.
Perfect. And then it's just right clicking, right? Hi, my name is Libby Tart and I'm with the Energy, Equity and the Environment Division. And we're here to present our quarterly 4 update. That would be October to December of last year. And so just to reinforce, our division is responsible for the Sustainability Action Plan that was adopted in July of 2023. And it has 10 different initiatives that are on your screen. So we work on a myriad of different topic areas involving sustainability and in the environment. So, so one key focus area that that our division does is education and empowerment. We have fun participatory challenges and events that we do on a monthly basis. And so one of them is the monthly challenge where we implore employees and our residents with these little challenge cards to take on some sustainability actions. And so they can check off their sustainability actions, take a screenshot, and then give us their data, and it helps with our collection of meeting various targets. We also do we were doing a mindful movie last year every month, and had 40 participants over Q4 for that. And then we have a sustainability book of the month that would be themed around the month. So October was healthy homes, for instance. So in general, like our numbers for the participation in 2024 for all of these educational initiatives were 181 monthly challenge participants, 151 individuals that came to the mindful movies to learn about sustainability in that particular month, and then the book of the month. And our employees that read the book of the month get some more Tango points. So some extra little incentives on the side. So we had 450 people participating in all of these initiatives. And that gives us some statistics, you know, to actually help with our data collection and meet our targets with the Sustainability Action Plan. So for the savings from these monthly challenges altogether took 441,740 pounds of carbon dioxide off of our participants, and that's the equivalent of 500,000 plus miles driven by someone, you know, in their car, or 22,546 gallons of gas. So some other initiatives that we did in Q4 were we were invited to a variety of festivals and gatherings. And so we said yes, and we tabled at Fall Fest. We tabled at the Employee Wellness Fair. We also tabled at the holiday tree lighting event and handed out these little ornaments that involved seeds, so you could actually plant the ornament and also stick it on your tree if you'd like. And then we participated in the Commerce City, North Denver Environmental Justice Collaborative meeting that was fostered through CDPHE and the EPA. And that was a meeting to discuss water and a variety of kind of empowerment actions that neighbors could take. We were also part of, we kicked off a LEED study cohort group, and LEED is a certification for sustainability and green buildings. It can also be for neighborhoods and other varieties of sustainability actions, but a great number of our employees that are studying for this cohort are from our building division. So trying to get that certification to add to ensure that our buildings and, you know, and our development community understands that sustainability is at our core too. So they have a year to complete the exam and take it. So they have until July of 2025, but we're really excited about that. We also in Q4 decided to hold a lot of listening sessions with our divisions and our departments, and basically go out there and say, hey, we'd love to collaborate with you on a variety of things that help us with our sustainability action plan goals. So we held some listening sessions with community relations, with parks, recreation, golf, with Public Works, and we decided to purchase 2 solar generators for various events, because we listened to what parks and community relations might need. We decided to partner with economic development on further initiatives, advertising, some grant opportunities that are through the state. Also, the Colorado Green Business Network is a really great alliance that we want all of our economic development community to know about. With Public Works, we're having bi-monthly meetings to better collaborate on grants and other opportunities. And then we are collaborating on one of the park smoothies this year, and showing the Lorax and purchasing some educational supplies for the camps so that they can grow butterflies and learn more about ecosystems and biodiversity. And the kind of the list goes on and on, but we're also participating in the Schneider Electric contract, and we secured $100,000 tree planting contract with the ACT money, so that we can have tree planting events for this 2025 year. So in terms of development and building reviews, we take a sustainability spin. A lot of times it's actually economically feasible for us to suggest things to the development community and tell them that it could be some cost savings to them as well. But we reviewed 18 land use applications in Q4 and provided GID fees, which are water fees, for the building division, along with reviewing some master models for some of our new development communities. In terms of water and Q4, we continue our work with the Project Accelerator program, which is a partnership that we're doing with South Adams or SAC-West, and we're collaborating on water sustainability and the potential for a Cash for Grass program, which is a turf replacement program. So we were in the middle of that Project Accelerator project. We'll be updating a little bit more in this Q1 on that. And then we've been participating in the Xeric Demonstration Garden Grant, which is to identify 2 potential Xeric demonstration gardens, one in the south side and one on the north side, for promoting water smart landscaping in our parks developments. And then we attended some grant presentations, and we actually did a Project Accelerator and Xeric demonstration garden presentation with our consultants to EPAC. And EPAC was so inspired by those 2 programs that they really want to do a subcommittee to champion water smart landscaping and other programs. We held 3 water team, water committee, and water commission meetings, which were great. And then we provided some water educational overviews to several of our new community development staff members and to the URA. In terms of air, we provided talking points to the mayor on the Suncor Plant 2 permit renewal. And he used them for the December Air Quality Control Commission hearings. We provided additional collaboration and feedback about 2 development applications that were proposing flares in their operations because they're industrial operations. And we collaborated with our Adams County partnerships to better understand what those applications are all about and to educate our residents about it. And then over the Q4, we applied for a CDPHE environmental justice grant in partnership with one of our nonprofit organizations in Commerce City called Spirit of the Sun that promotes Indigenous learning and education with youth and young adults. And so we're partnering to remediate soil with the utilization of mycelium, which they inject into the soil, and it brings the soil back into better quality. And it's a more healing way to ensure that the soil is ready for vegetables or whatever you want to grow in the ground. So we will hear back in March a little bit more about that one. We also resubmitted the EPA EJ Community Change Grant after receiving more feedback from the EPA about that. Some other accomplishments that we did we joined Drive Clean Colorado. We're a member organization, and now we're a part of their Charging Smart cohort with all of those other wonderful local jurisdictions that are featured in that photo. So that cohort goes through June, and we're learning a lot about EV readiness and air quality, and we're partnering with Public Works on that membership in the future. We handed out 40 weatherization kits and water filters to residents in partnership with our Community Wellbeing Division. We have stocked, I think, every break room and kitchen with reusable and washable dishware and utensils and some green cleaning supplies to reduce internal waste, within our own city operations. And we were selected for a mobile tour workshop where we're going to be talking about the story of Commerce City and the ability to grow the city further due to the partnership with the Rocky Mountain Arsenal Wildlife Refuge at this year's National American Planning Association Conference, which is held in late March, early April of this year. So we're partnering with the Army and the Fish and Wildlife Service, and we're excited to bring that story to people from all over the United States that are attending this conference, with our city manager doing the introduction. And so that concludes our presentation for Q4, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Council members have questions? Councilmember Teeter?
Do any of these new plans interfere with our new president's plans?
That's a
And
great
is our new
question.
president's
Yes.
executive orders that he set down?
All of our plans are, okay.
I'll
Sorry.
jump in and tackle that one. I'd say it's too early to say. We've been compiling a list of potential functions, operations, projects, programs that could potentially be impacted by that. We anticipate we'll know by March at the earliest, what that may mean for us as a city, right? I think more primarily it's going to be around the EPA grants and things associated with that, or if there's funding that we've received through the state that may have been a pass-through the federal government, that would be that. Like I said, we do have an organic list that we are keeping together, that we're keeping just in that time when we are aware, so that we can pivot. But right now, it's business as usual. We're continuing to keep moving forward. We've not been told as much by the representatives that we work with within those various agencies, whether it's in DOT, EPA, or elsewhere, not to. So we're conducting that business so that we're still able to leverage some of the opportunities that are out of that sustainability action plan. When that does come down, if it is not in alignment, then we'll be back in front of you all seeking guidance on how to shift accordingly.
The only thing I got to say is that they're looking at global warming or global impact totally. In other words, what we're doing is closing down all of our steel mills and all of our refineries and all of our oil products. We're shipping them overseas, and then they're making the product using coal and dirty processes and slave labor, and they just doesn't add up to the overall picture. Doesn't add up. So
That's
yes, it's got to change.
Thank you. Just thank you for all the work you're doing over the last couple of years, and thanks for the update. It looks like it's really just comprehensive, and I appreciate it. I guess when you're thinking about the work ahead, I would love to see if there's an opportunity to look at food waste. It's a big contributor to just waste and environmental impact. So I don't know if there's something where you guys can look at that in the future, whether it's our Bison Grill. Our school districts are a big contributor of just food waste, and I don't know if that's something to keep eye on.
Thank you. Yes, we are very interested in that subject as well. Melody is our new sustainability manager is here. And Olivia is in class tonight with her master's, but we are looking at partnering in food waste initiatives and composting and other assorted things that I think the city is evaluating as a whole with different programmatic elements. We have the RFP out for trash and recycling, and we would love to see the potential for a composting program or additional initiatives with those kinds of contracts. But but there are incremental steps that can happen that we very much so want to participate in.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Just as you guys are thinking about your next, just a recommendation or an idea. Because like with like bulk milk or salad waste from schools, because a lot of times schools, you get the packaged salads and then the students just pick out what they need and then just throw everything else out. So that's a lot of waste that takes place. And so anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Douglas.
So thank you so much for the presentation. Welcome, Melody. Glad to have you, and keep up the good work. No matter what climate crisis is real, it's something that we can't write off as a hoax. It's not. And something that we have to face. And I was thrilled to death to see people using the charging stations at Eagle Point Rec Center. They've been consistently having different cars there. And really pleased to see the number of people that have electric cars that are obviously living in the South. So just keep up the good work. And when are the EPAC meetings now?
They are typically the fourth Thursday of the month, I believe.
27th is
The 27th is the next one.
And that'll be at Eagle Point at 4:30.
I can double check my phone if you give me one moment.
It's not my subject.
No, I got the
I believe so, but I don't want, I'd like to go on record with that. Yes, so it is confirmed for both.
All right.
4:30.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Councilmember Chacon.
Thank you so much for your presentation. We are some of the few, and we're one of the few states that has an EJ Act, and we are a DIC community. It's been a lot of bipartisan support and some of the few spaces to still keep that in this space. And I think especially the type of city that we have, it's not just that climate impacts are real, but the health and safety of our community is real. So one thing that I'm seeing, and we don't need to be that way, especially in community, is it's not EJ and workforce or EJ and industry. We're all the same when we're going to have the same impacts of our air and water being impacted right now. And I'm concerned about this next administration because, yes, they just fired, I believe, 150 of EPA. So all the work that we just did, and I was part of that same council for Commerce City and EJ communities coming together, can not just be pushed back, but can be eliminated. But as a state, we actually already have those protective measures because of the EJ Act. So I would really like to start reaching out between workforce and EJ communities because we are the same communities. I've even seen recently in a bill supplied for, I believe it was CDPHE, where it was attacking to some degree air toxin and workforce. our workforce is also the same community being impacted by health effects. So when it comes to a lot more of these spaces, addressing cumulative impacts is, and that was just signed in Commerce City just last summer, 1338, is going to be key about our water and air, and especially addressing a just transition of renewables in and around us. We're having these discussions now about what does that look like, and it's very real about transitioning our community before it's displaced. So I would really want to highlight that, because the goal should always be to protect our community, and then yes, to cite how many harms, which environmental harms are real. We're still having to fight certain protections for industry and regulations by every regulation if you go to the AQCD and AQPD. So I'm really grateful for these, but I want us to always really put into what I do for EJ too, the equity analysis of cumulative impacts. So I just want to try to help bridge that, because sometimes it always feels like we're at odds when we don't need to be.
Yeah, Councilwoman Chacon, that's an excellent point. Thank you so much. And we will definitely be mindful.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation and the work you've done, and Melody, for you to come on board. You were CDPHE, right?
Yeah, so I was at CDPHE for 10 years, and then before that I was with Tri-County Health Department for 17.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Just received an email earlier about 2 opportunities. I don't know if you work in those in the background with, was it NAPI? Non-attainment area pollution mitigation enterprise, and then NOFO. That is, what is NOFO? First notice of funding opportunities.
Our grants manager mentioned the first one, sorry
Yeah.
for the wording.
Non-attainment?
Yes,
Yeah.
the non-attainment, which I believe Councilwoman Chacon mentioned earlier. It is a very short timeline, but we are proposing some topics. So we'll see what we can pull together in the very short timeline. I think it's a 2-week before a draft needs to be submitted. So we will very much so toss around some ideas. Hopefully a lot of it is kind of with an initiative and with a lens of Public Works participating in them as well. So our hope is that we can manifest something, knowing that we just heard about it today, and, we have a couple of weeks, but we're, fingers crossed that maybe some of the ideas that UFRI is supplying could potentially pull a small grant together for that. But it sounds like a wonderful opportunity that we should definitely take advantage of.
All right, thank you. And thanks again for joining the team. Appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, the next one is a council appointed employment evaluation discussion of Mayor Pro Tem number 1 here. We go over that. And would it be possible not to go through this and just wait until she's available to put this back on the deck?
I believe, obviously, it's your committee, Mayor and council, so it's your choice. She is the chair of that body. So I leave that to you all.
You guys okay with Councilmember Douglas?
Well, yeah, because we were supposed to have a meeting on February 5th. And Oscar's a part of this as well, Councilmember Madera. And he hasn't been to either one, but the one on the 5th, I had just gotten a phone message from Gavin Blakeman, and I just got off the phone with her like 2 minutes before the meeting was supposed to start. And she had just lost her husband at the same, maybe just hours before. And so because of that, I had asked if I could be replaced by another council person, and then I guess it ended up that the meeting just got canceled. So anyway,
Are you okay with it in reschedule?
I would prefer to be because we didn't get to have that other meeting. But it depends on what everybody
Thank you.
else thinks.
Councilmember Ford,
I'm gonna have it being rescheduled, I don't care.
Councilmember Teeter,
we had a quorum there, even with, Christie dropping out, we still had a quorum for the meeting and
are you okay to reschedule this?
Councilmember Noble decided to cancel the meeting saying that it was gonna be handled tonight.
Yeah, but she thought she was gonna be here. Yeah,
And so we all said, okay,
right. Are you okay with it being
I'd
rescheduled?
rather just get it done.
Councilman Hughes?
What decisions need to be made tonight, or what, what's the timeline in terms of having it tonight, because the meeting was canceled, with the idea that it's gonna be, a consensus tonight, and then, that's my first question, and the second question is like, how does that push back any of the evaluations if we postpone this, because looking at our study session agenda, it's gonna be a lot on the plate, so I guess I'll leave it to city manager, city attorney, in terms of like, does this postpone quality evaluation opportunities in the near future? I guess is the question.
I'll let you go first.
It does not change any review timelines at all.
Neither for me either.
Yeah, I don't want to speak for anyone on council that's on the committee, but my understanding is the whole point of this is to have a conversation about what tool council's using to provide a review and feedback to your 3 employees, right? So, essentially, once council has that conversation, I do have the contracts, so I did look at them. For mine and for Jason's, there's a contractual obligation to have that conversation and agreement with each of us. My recommendation would be that should take place in an executive session. It's part of the sort of performance evaluation process. That language is not in the municipal judges. Nevertheless, I think the templates that you have are the ICMA templates for municipalities to review city managers, city attorneys, and municipal judges. So if council wants to have the conversation, you don't have to have it now. There's no deadline or time period coming from our contracts or anything.
Can we do the presentation, because it sounds like there's no decision point. It needs to take place tonight anyway, it's more information gathering and understanding.
Well, right now, I'm going around asking to remove it and then have it at a later date. So Purple Tim can weigh in on it.
So I'm okay with having a discussion tonight and going through the PowerPoint
So
presentation.
that's you and Rocky. Councilmember Kim, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't, I don't care either way, to be honest. I mean, honestly, if I had to make a decision, I say we just go through it tonight. It's on the agenda. Let's do the presentation as it is. And then if there is an additional discussion needs to be had, we can have that at another time.
Okay. Councilmember Chacon?
I'm fine with postponing, especially if it's not going to damage any timeline if we did.
Maybe this will help, Mayor. Given it's your committee, one of your committee members was going to be taking you all through the presentation for that discussion. So, this was not a Steph presentation. This was your committee bringing it forward for you all to discuss.
In other words, Susan was gonna put the presentation on.
Oh, so it makes sense to postpone if you weren't able to, that's fine.
Mayor, I would say I'm okay with postponing them at that point.
Right. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Douglas?
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up one other point, that the first meeting, it was just me and Susan, so that's what I'm saying. We didn't even have the second one, so I kind of don't know what we would be presenting without her, because I'm on the committee and I kind of don't know what's going on.
Okay.
Just looking at February 24th, I got a couple recommendations for you all if you want to continue to tackle it in February. You've got carport accessory structure overview. We rate that as a priority 3, so it's not a 1, it's not a high priority, it kind of falls in the middle. So whether that got pushed or not isn't going to change anything depending on on our operations or anything that you all would need to adopt as an ordinance. And then there's a discussion around vehicle acquisitions for Public Works and PD. I think that's another one that at the end of the day, you know, internally we're navigating. It's more coming before you all, giving you updates on what may be coming downstream, but it's not critical for coming to you all on that evening. So that would actually free up an hour's worth of time, putting it down at 8:05. So you'd have, right, this was slated for a 45-minute discussion. You take those two off, that could slide in. So it kind of puts you in around that time range of 9:05.
Sorry, I said again, you said carport and which one, other?
Carport and vehicle acquisitions.
Okay.
And that would be February 24th.
But carport's important because of the challenges that we've been hearing from our residents. So I would love to keep that one on there and add that to that night.
So if we add that on there, it would be 9:45?
Or you take off,
Probably closer to 10.
Okay.
or would you take off the vehicle
We
acquisition?
could.
And I think I would recommend taking that off and then just swapping this one because
Sure.
at the same time, it's up to you guys.
Councilmember Ford?
Timing on vehicle acquisition, how does that affect you guys from the thumbs up nod that you need from us on your vehicle acquisition? Because I don't want to hold up your progress either.
That would probably shift this back to March 17th for a discussion with our ordinance. Right now, we have an ordinance on March 3rd. But once again, I think we're still going through that. We're going through that internally as well. So so for the next week, we're still building out information to fill that presentation out on the 24th. So once again, you know, we're reverse engineering from the 24th to try to get some information in there to give that head nod, but we may also not get there because of where some of the stipulations in various agreements need to be. So, right, we're kind of playing, obviously, with a little bit of house money here with whatever items that we have on pull up. Now, you could easily just add that item. That's gonna be a rather full agenda. You've got 6 items. You'd have 6 items on that agenda after adding that. Carports, 3-strike vehicle impoundment ordinance, grants update, vehicle acquisition for Public Works, Police Department, private golf cart use discussion.
You know, I was gonna take more than half.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and I would move the golf cart and then, there's another one in there,
Well, I keep the golf cart up there. It's a carport?
yeah, carport, even,
You keep carport?
yeah.
Why don't we just go ahead and add it on there?
Okay, we can do that.
Thank you. 'Cause I don't think that presentation is gonna take that long.
Which one?
What,
The golf crew?
No,
So it's gonna be an all-nighter.
For the golf cart.
that's why it's last.
So, golf cart is last, so we'll slot this one in, whether it's, we'll slot this one in.
Councilmember Kim? Thank you.
I had nothing.
Oh, you're just saying hi? Okay, thank you.
We will slot this one in on the 24th.
Did you want to go over to work review?
Yes, absolutely. Dylan, if you don't mind bringing that up, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
You bet.
For the day, we're gonna cover 2 meetings, March 17th and April 7th. Please just bear that, you know, there may be items that are added or removed as we receive information from other parties, both internal or external. But for March 17th, as we currently stand, we're projecting to be done in around 8:55, 9 o'clock. We start with proclamations identifying April as Child Abuse Prevention Month, Autism Awareness Acceptance Month, Sikh Awareness Appreciation Month, and April 2025 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month. We have a last proclamation identifying the week of April 6th to the 12th, National Crime Victim Week in Commerce City. These are very standard proclamations that we do for the month of April. Altogether, that's approximately going to take 25 minutes. We're holding 30 minutes for notice council business, as items come up, as we've seen over time. On the consent agenda, we have a budget amendment for additional funding of community events. This is going to be the first reading from the discussion that was held with you all at January. We're still working through some of the details and questions that were raised about being able to do the ice skating rink within the remaining budget appropriation that was asked. We have a resolution authorizing award for updates to amenities within the River Run Park Playground. We have a resolution in support of application for Great Outdoors Colorado Generation Wild funding. Typically, as we receive that for our use. We also then have an award of a contract for ball field repair replacement. I do not have the specific name of that, but as you all know, you all see these from time to time for different ball fields throughout the core city and the northern range. We have a temporary construction easement between Gray Star for crossing of the O'Brien Canal. This would be in the Aberdeen neighborhood, as also Peoria Street, just north of the existing condominiumized townhomes as you make that bend. And then we have a reimbursement agreement with Gray Star in the amount of $500,000, which was already budgeted within our CIP for said construction of that for that activity. And we are simply memorializing that in a reimbursement agreement.
I'm sorry, what date is this one?
March 17th.
March 17th, okay.
Yes. As we continue to scroll down, we do not currently have any public hearing items identified, but we do have a discussion around the 2025 concrete flat work as a resolution. Now, obviously, we have work schedule review, and like I said, currently slated to end at 8:55 p.m. As we go to April 7th, we have proclamation declaring April 18th Arbor Day in Commerce City. That will also be our My C3 day of service as well for our employees to be able to give back into the community with volunteering. We have our standing oil and gas monthly update on consent. We have the second reading of $484,560 for the Highway Safety Improvement Program. We have an ordinance approving vehicle acquisition for Public Works and Police Department. That is first reading is on March 3rd. Currently holding firm. We then have 1.367 for 100,000 for fiscal year 2027 Highway Safety Improvement Program. And then we have ordinance 2669 additional funding, second reading for community events. We have second reading of PUDA 23-0004, car wash that you will hear as a public hearing on first reading March 3rd. That being on consent will obviously be dependent upon the actions that council takes on March 3rd. So that could end up under ordinances for second reading. And if so, we will then have the appropriate time, which is typically between 10 to 15 inches, what you've all taken for that. But right now is our standard practice that we leave it on consent until we know the affirming action on that first reading for us to shift accordingly. We have a proclamation declaring the week of April 21st to 28th as International Dark Sky Week in Commerce City. Resolution declaring support of public art installation for Eagle Point Rec Center. The resolution for Central Square is a contract amendment for additional services which we use for being able to do our online permitting for business licenses, development review, and so forth. We have a resolution authorizing award of a contract for partial reimbursement for Aberdeen site to Gray Star. You all have seen that as well. You have PCS Group as we have three public hearings, PUDA 24-0002, requesting an amendment to allow residential uses within planning area C1. This is for Buffalo Run East, at the southeast corner of Chambers and 120th. There's then a variance request being made by Revesco Properties to vacate an access easement along 103rd Place, extending west into Peoria Parkway. And then we have a resolution to determine the eligibility of annexation for a property generally located at the northwest corner of 96th Avenue in Piccadilly, east of E47 on the outside gate of the airport.
Excuse me, so you said it's gonna be in the southeast corner, so it's on the same side as the car wash, of course, on the corner, right?
Yeah, southeast corner of Chambers and 120th.
Okay, I thought you said southwest, sorry.
Yeah, I started with that, I think, to try to correct myself, but yeah, southeast corner of Chambers and 120th.
Okay, thank you.
Slated right now to end around 9:40. But once again, depending upon how certain things shake out on first reading on March 3rd, that could add time to your calendar. I'd like to share one addition that you'll find that we don't have up, but on the March 3rd meeting, we're adding a ARPA funding carryover budget amendment that will be on consent. It's to carry over remaining funds at the end of year 2024 and reappropriating those into 2025. But that will be the only set of changes beyond consent. It does not change the overall timeline of what we anticipate to conclude the meeting at 9:35 p.m.
Are you okay with that? Councilmember Kim, you okay with that?
Yes.
Councilmember Chacon?
Yes, that works for me.
Councilmember Douglas?
Yes, but I was gonna ask if we could invite the young mother who came forward to Arbor Day, the one from, I think it was Monaco Elementary, remember? She asked for
Central Elementary.
was it Central? That asked to help her with the trees and everything. And you reached out to her?
We did reach out to her. Jim, the mother who came, spoke before council at public comment about wanting to partner with the city on planting more trees with Adams 14 School District.
Yes, sir.
They would like to invite her. I know you may say that.
I would, I don't
Yeah.
know about the right.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with us in inviting her. I mean, that's, we can make contact and see whether or not she's willing to come or not. That's not a problem.
Betty Valdez was the one that was there translating for her. So if you need to, I can get you contact information.
That would be helpful, just in case we, I think we still have it, but
We've got her contact information. It just,
yeah.
she does not speak any English, so we have to have
Right.
translation.
We can find somebody for that.
And so Douglas, you done?
Yes.
That's what I do.
I think on that same vein, it would be great to invite Paul from Parks and Rec and golf. He's on the Parks and Rec Golf Committee. He's been a big advocate for Harborist Day. He's been a big advocate of trying to have more trees across the city, so we'd be great to invite him as well.
Also, we're planting trees on the golf course now.
Oh, no, not on the golf course.
It's a links course.
I know.
Short trees.
It's a par two on the 18th hole.
Councilmember Chacon?
That works for me to invite her, please. And just make sure we have all services for her for Spanish translation.
And you're okay with the schedule?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Teeter, you okay with the schedule?
Yeah, I think good for all night. I don't have to get up and go to work the next day.
Yeah, we know.
You're still driving trucks in your dreams though? No.
So can I ask about March 3rd? Because we have a URA, and we're still gonna.
Yeah, we have a URA. We have a pretty packed agenda that night. I think just from legislative subcommittee meeting in preparation of going up to DC the following day. for that week, obviously meeting with the various federal agencies and departments. We then have a URA where we have two topics of discussion. One will be the resolution dedicating right of way from the URA to the city. There is a second item that will be added to this agenda for the URA, which is the loan agreement discussion. That's not showing on this, but they go hand in hand.
TCE and the special warranty deed.
Special warranty deed, yes. So you have three items that'll need to be discussed. I need that. Two situated around the easement, one situated around a discussion previously held by the URA and the city in a reduction of loan obligation from URA to the city. We anticipate that will be a hour's worth of your time from start to finish under URA. What we are discussing internally is how best to accommodate that within what is already going to be right now a long night for you all, or could potentially become even longer. So there may be some proposals back on maybe starting meetings earlier, how to do so. And obviously with URA, those are special calls. So we hope to be back at least with some ideas or proposals to share with the mayor, then to bring to the full body on the 24th of February.
You guys okay with that?
So just for March 3rd meeting, you think about some ideas, making not as long as that, what is your recommendation?
Well, not necessarily not as long, but how to maybe start the meetings at a different period of time, so that you're not feeling rushed, particularly with the URA, because if it's gonna take an hour, let's say you start at 6 to 7, everything else is then gonna cascade an hour off of that. So whether or not, for instance, you start at 5:30 and go to 6:30, how do we do that with what is the special call, but also what we have within our municipal code for URAs, or for not URAs, but for regular meetings? So we're working that through to try to minimize the impact of the URA with the overall regular meeting schedule, so that we can bring that back to you all and see what fits.
Now, since URA is something, if it's called upon, that could be started earlier.
Yes. Yeah, and sequence wise, the URA would need to make a decision on conveyance of special warranty deed, the temporary construction easement and permanent easement prior, and the loan agreement prior to council reviewing and making a decision, because they're the ones that are conveying the property interest. So that needs to happen prior to the council meeting. But yes, to answer your question, the URA could meet earlier than.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, how would that impact the legislative?
That's what we're trying to figure out. That's the puzzle. So you have, there's language on the municipal code on regular meeting start times, right? And it's 6 o'clock. We don't have a meeting between now and then for you all to make a motion to change that start time, right? So what you could do is we were just talking about this, but you could have the URA meeting, you could have the legislative meeting take place, like the presentation be a part of the council meeting. You're all there, but I don't want to speak for you. I mean, there's a lot packed in that agenda, so.
There is, and like I said, that's one option. There may be other options out there. I don't know where we're at with all of the necessary documentation, because we'd have to have it uploaded by this Friday, like the special meeting on February 24th. It's, like I said, we're trying to navigate that, just knowing where we're at for March 3rd. And March 3rd is an important conversation for you all to have about DC, because there's gonna be a lot of conversations on a lot of things that we need to know is happening at that level coming down, and they need to know vice versa about some focus points for us as Carver City. So I wouldn't want to shortchange that discussion either.
Yeah.
So
Could we have a special meeting on February 18th?
Have cultural council that night.
Yeah, and I don't know if everybody may have the available. I can say I do not, but
I'm just throwing it out there.
yeah. But once again, you all could call a special meeting anytime. But once again, I think it comes back to whether or not we actually have all of the pieces and parts, particularly for the URA, ready to go, that would actually be able to help you make an informed decision.
Well, we have to call a special meeting on March 3rd, or no, sorry, February. When do we won't be able to call a special meeting until.
March, special meeting
Okay,
for URA can be called at any time.
for URA.
Yeah, URA. Because the only way for us to do URA meetings is through special call. Right.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be opposed. I mean, we have Parks and Rec golf that night, but I wouldn't be opposed to a special meeting if we needed to get the URA. That's my opinion. I wouldn't be opposed to it.
For March 3rd?
Yes. Or no, so for February 18th.
I don't know if we have everything.
Oh, okay.
For February 18th. And I couldn't say confidently that we have everything for February 25th.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, on the reports, City Manager Rogers.
Not much to share, Mayor, with you. So for one of the very few times I have nothing to report.
Wow.
Oh, sorry, that's why I have my right hand person in Cheryl. We are actually using $300,000 in 2K contingency support for the Paradise Island retrofits and reconstruction. And it's come to our knowledge, and this would happen when, you get into the ground. You start to find things creep up. What we found creep up is the vinyl slide that we have are starting to come up and need to be repaired. The cost in order to do so is $300,000. So that's a new add as we've been going through that reconstruction project that needs to be addressed. Or excuse me, fiberglass.
Do we need to-
Slides.
Yes.
Do we need to have the vote on there? Is that gonna be put on the
No, I
consent
just need to
agenda?
make you all aware from 2K contingency that we're using that as in support of that project. So we've made that change, making you aware of that tonight. But that's why it's being used, is because we have found that those fiberglass sides are starting to come up, and we need to change those out so that they're properly faceted and able to be used by our residents.
Anybody get?
Sorry.
Yeah, that's,
So,
that would hurt.
Yeah, that would be bad.
All right. City Attorney Zazek.
So the one item that I have for you is trying to get scheduled land use trainings. I know we've talked about it several times. I think some council members have been speaking with most of you one-on-one lately. Some have more interest than others. So I think the fundamental question I have is forum for us to give that training. It would be partnered between my office and community development. CD has been working on giving trainings to planning commission over the last 2 months. So it would be similar sort of format. I think it'd be two-parted. For my shop, it would be a focus on quasi-judicial, roles, responsibilities, training on how to ask questions, et cetera, and thinking about approval criteria, whereas they would get more granular into the different types of land use decision-making that there is, as well as sort of give you a highlight of what the process is from application all the way to when it comes to city council. So I think there's fundamentally two formats. I think we could do the 2-on-2 or 1-on-1 format, where we meet, we can get that scheduled depending on your availability. Alternatively, we could do that in a study session, or I guess the third option is something else, right? And I sort of leave it to you all. I don't want to speak for Jeff Brazel, but in talking to him a couple months ago, we're here for you. We're happy to provide whatever training you want. We just need to start getting that scheduled. So I think sort of leave that to you all to discuss internally. And if it's not, if it's not 3 people at a time, then obviously there's some more flexibility in just meeting with you one-on-one or get your availability.
You doing it a Saturday again? Like later in March? April.
I would, because we have our retreat.
Oh, no, I'm talking about like in April or April 5th or something for like, how long does it take? 3 hours?
I think 3 hours would be more than sufficient. Again, I look to you all. I can
It's
make
just an
myself-
option. Otherwise you can do one-on-one or two, up to two at a time.
When do you need a decision made, like what would?
I don't need a decision particularly. I'm just trying to be responsive to some of the conversations we had, and I don't want the year to, next thing you know, we're in Q3 and I haven't done it. So want to make sure that I'm responsive to our conversations.
I suggest that if you guys want to have that conversation and maybe 2 year or one, whatever's convenient for you, to do that with Lee. And then we'll see how many have gone through that process. And then maybe if there's a handful left and those health members can meet on that Saturday or something. Just a suggestion.
Okay, we're in agreement with that. Annette will be reaching out to you to figure out your availability. Go from there.
Councilmember Chacon,
Yes,
did you hear what the suggestions were?
yes.
Are you okay with reaching out to Lee and
Annette, we'll reach out to her.
Okay.
Figure out her availability.
all right. Councilmember.
Thank you.
Yes.
Sorry.
I concur.
All right. Thank you.
That's all I have.
Appreciate that. All right, on to reports. You council members have reports? Councilmember Teeter, you have reports? Councilmember Ford?
Yeah, I just
Oh, you're
wanted
appointed
to,
him.
oh, no, I just wanted to let you all know, longtime resident and longtime Rotarian Norm Union
Yeah, I was on. that.
passed away.
Thank you.
On Friday.
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, I think it was Wednesday,
Was it? Oh, I was told it was Friday.
and his services are tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
At what time?
He's being buried at Elmwood Cemetery in Brighton. The other thing I wanted to bring up, one of Norm's biggest pet peeves, and I think it's appropriate to bring it up right now, is he always wanted to have a cemetery in Commerce City. And rightfully so, because there's a lot of people that have lived here their whole lives, like me and Rocky. And where do we go when we perish? You know, and our community's
Going to
getting,
heaven.
yeah, yeah, of course, our soul, but our body, but our community's getting big enough. When you look at the size of our community, that it should be in the back of everybody's mind that at some point we should consider, I mean, I don't know if it's municipal or private cemetery, but unless you're Jewish, you can't find a place to be buried in Commerce City.
We have 2 Jewish cemeteries.
Yeah, well, no, one, but the other one is full, the Riverside.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's always been one of those things where it's like, who wants to spend the money to put a cemetery in Commerce City? But at some point in time, it becomes a need or a service that some of the residents would like to be provided with that live here or grew up here or have chose to move here. Where do you get buried in Commerce City? I mean, you have to go to Elmwood and Brighton because there is no cemetery here. I'm not looking forward to having that need for a while. But however, you know, it sneaks up on you, I guess. So keep it in mind that at some point, sometime, it's not the flashiest thing to put into our community. But at some point, we'll probably need one. I mean, I think we already need one, but it's where do you put it? What's the cost of something like that? So that's all I got.
Thank you. Councilmember Dukes?
Just a report, I had a brief meeting with Daniel Frank about just the LDC code changes and what does that look like and how does it impact his future pros and cons of customers and what's happening there. And then I plan to reach out to the KSE team just to get an update on where we're at with Victory Crossings and try to get a better understanding of how we can help continue to usher that project forward in a pretty quick way.
Oh, I just saw CRL folks. I was at an event and they mentioned that they're gonna reach out to us here soon.
Okay.
So there's nothing wrong with you reaching out to them as well,
Oh,
but just want to mention it.
really doubt about it, yeah.
Thank you. Councilmember Douglas?
I will keep you all informed about, any services for Kathy Blakeman's husband. And, that was, unexpected for her. She wasn't expecting it to happen so soon, so. I think it really hit her hard. So I wanna make sure that you all have the opportunity to pay your respects if that is what you would like. On Thursday, we got invited to Bison Grill to do a breakfast tasting, and they're going to come out with a new menu that's very similar to some of the trendy places that you're finding like downtown, Snooze, First Watch, those kinds of places. And so they're going to be extending their breakfast menu to have some really tasty, different dishes. And everything that they presented was just beautiful and tasty, and I think it will bring some excitement to have that menu available. And it's 2 pages long, so traditional breakfast, but also different menus that will appeal to a variety of people. And I think it will also attract business into the restaurant. That night I went to the youth commission meeting, and these kids are blowing me away. There's 7 that are going to DC. And then they also held elections for officers, and there was actually competition. It wasn't just for, I mean, they already had a president and a vice president in place, but people stepped up to the plate to be selected for secretary and for treasurer. And I couldn't believe we had to have an election because.
How did they get the funds to do that?
Don't need funds. You just need somebody who's willing to, to go to DC. That's part of the budget for every year, so. Yeah, they used to take
Part of whose budget?
everybody,
Sounds budget.
The city's budget.
yeah. And so they'll be going to NRC in DC. And at first, I think they were kind of hesitant to go to DC, but then they decided that they would change their minds and go.
It's a
And,
big youth convenience. It's a big youth convenience, not just
Yeah.
our youth. It's the big.
It's part of it. I'm the National League of Cities, but they have a youth convention,
Yeah.
and it's yeah. So they'll be there, and I'm so proud of this youth commission because they are just really seriously dedicated. They also volunteered for the daddy-daughter dance on Friday night, and the mayor and I went and volunteered and ended up taking people's phones and taking pictures of the dads with their daughters in front of this beautiful backdrop that Anna and Jared put together. The place was gorgeous. I couldn't believe how well they put that whole event together. And of course, there were other staff members who helped, but Jared and Anna led that, and it was an amazing event. The place was packed. They were dancing, eating, doing crafts. Just a great event. And then the next night went to the Healthy Hearts fundraising event at the Dome, and that was a very well attended event. That's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Kim, do you have a report?
No, sir.
Councilmember Chacon?
Nope.
Okay. Councilman Chi, did you keep everything? Okay. Yes, I went to the tasting as well, or Buffalo, Run Golf Course, Bison Grill. And the staff came out and the ones who were decided to get together and change the menu out. They just said, hey, let's do it. There's 3 of them, but all together, you have a good staff there at the Bison Grill that were excited to use their talents. There's a sous chef over there that did some amazing work. And you know, there could be expansion later on, but their whole passion was around foodies and showing off their talent when it comes to food. And they did an amazing job. I posted on social media. The city also did the same thing. I wasn't gonna give away the date that they're gonna open up for breakfast as far as this menu goes. Next, they're gonna change their dinner menu and then their lunch menu. So, and it just some of the choices there were something you would see at a Snooze or some other First Watch and all that. They didn't have the prices on there, but they're gonna be competitive. So really good. The food was so good, you could taste the different ingredients. It wasn't just thrown together. You could actually taste the food. And then Councilmember Douglas volunteered for the youth commission, and I went, and I think I was gonna be there that long, but I'd been there for about an hour and a half. And I saw, you know, I thought you were gonna be there with your daughter. I'm just messing with you.
Oh, with what?
Daddy daughter dance.
Oh, no, she's too old now. She's sophomore in high school, she's like that.
There were
So-
some pictures there.
Yeah, there were some older kids there too. It was pretty cool. You see these dads come in
Oh,
and they're all dressed up. Their daughters were all dressed up, you know, and then you see them over there trying to get their pictures. Hey, let me help you out, take a picture, you know, and then I mean, it was nice because the weather was great. So they came in on the side, big long line. And we were gonna get there at 5:30. They were already there.
didn't
So
start till 6.
over 300 something participants for that night. Inside they were dancing and you could see the girls. And then the other side were normally it's the senior event area. So they made that a craft. So the kids can go and make craft for a little, what was it? Not a headscarf, but
And they had all kinds of different things that you
Little
could
bead
make.
thing
They
that
had
you
a
put
wishing well.
I don't know what you call it.
Yeah, we went when my daughter was in 4th grade. We've been before. It's great,
Okay.
great event.
I did it every year with my 2 daughters.
Yeah, that's sad. Yeah.
So it's great we have that because I didn't get to do it with our daughters because they didn't have that.
No.
And then what they do over at Reunion Elementary School
Yeah.
is what happens is the parents walk in, the dads walk in with their daughters. So the kids go over and play while the dads go over and talk to their friends.
That's what they do at Reunion Elementary.
And then Friday I had a new member orientation for NLC Transportation Infrastructure Services. And then Saturday, myself and Councilmember Douglas and Councilmember Teeter went to the Healing Hearts benefit for PennHOC. That was a really good event. And participation and overall the food was really good. So that was a good night. And as we were leaving, Councilmember Teeter, he came in because we had to leave early. And then we played table tag and he stayed for the rest of the program. So thank you for.
It's a good organization. Really supportive.
I don't know, did you guys have a good time watching Super Bowl?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, had a great time.
Yeah. The Chiefs.
Councilmember Chacon.
This might be selfish, but when are we gonna have the mother-son dances?
Oh, I think,
Mother son dance.
yes,
We can talk about that with PRG soon.
okay. We have an input on that. Thank you. All right, if there's no other business,
I appreciate you, Councilmember Ford, for bringing up Norm Union. I was gonna bring that up and yeah, he's been a long time. Community, he had his paper, The Beacon. So he's got a lot of history here.
Is Janet buried?
The Janet is buried, I don't know where, I think Elmwood. And his, him and Janet only had one daughter,
Yes,
and his daughter died, I think she was like 18.
yeah.
Was coming back for the weekend or whatever from college up in Fort Collins and crashed on I-25. And that really set Janet and Norm back hard,
Right.
which it would anybody.
Yes.
But with the Beacon and everything, I didn't always like the guy, but after getting to know him better, being in Rotary with him for all those years, I would go over and make repairs for him at his house
Yeah.
before he went to Inglenook and put some cameras up for him and stuff. And the one thing about Norm Union, he was always a very honest person. I always felt like he was trying to be as honest as he could be.
Yeah, he was.
So,
Very, very
I
unique
learned to like
individual.
both of them.
yeah.
Absolutely. All right. It's 9:10. We're adjourned.
But you guys want to stay a little long? Nope.
Have a good night, loves.
Thank you.
Two, good night.
Where's that funeral at tomorrow?